Chapter 566. Yunxian, don't go. Investigate the matter of the sacrificial blood first. Before we figure it out, don't let anyone leave the temple. Also, find some reliable people to protect Professor Lei and company. Don't let anyone take advantage of them, Zhou Wen said to Lu Yunxian. Yes, young Master One. I'll do it now. Lu Yunxian saluted and turned to leave. Before Professor Lei and company could react, the shock that Zhou Wen had given them when he sliced through the Aoyin stone statue was just too intense. Professor Lei, wait for Yunxian to come over. You can go to the Qiongqi temple. Su Wen, follow me. With that said, Zhou Wen walked towards the Torch Dragon Temple's passageway. Su Wen hurriedly followed, leaving Professor Lei and company standing there looking at each other. In the past, I heard that this Zhou Wen has caused quite a bit of trouble for the Yin family, causing the relationship between the Yin family and the Federation's upper echelons to worsen. From the looks of it, rumors can't be trusted. It does make sense for the Yin family to protect him. He should still be in school, right? Professor Lei sighed as he looked at the Aoyin stone statue that had been split into two. I heard that he's only a freshman this year, another professor said. That's only 17 or 18 years old. To have such achievements at this age, if he were in our Lei family would be even more protective than the Yin family, Professor Lei said. Chu Qingyun snorted coldly and said, He's Wang Mingyuan's disciple. Who knows what he has done in private? Otherwise, how could a student have such achievements? Professor Lei glanced at Chu Qingyun and said meaningfully, Qingyun, as researchers, it's a taboo to let emotions affect our judgment. Chu Qingyun's expression changed slightly when he heard that, but he quickly returned to normal. He said respectfully, Teacher, you're right. I know what to do. Everyone, take a break first. When Commander Lu brings people over, we'll head to the Qiongqi temple. Now that we're no longer restricted by the Aoyin stone statue, we can work for a long time. The work arrangements this time need to be replanned. Professor Lei picked up a notebook and began studying it. Zhou Wen led Su Wen into the passageway that led to the Torch Dragon Temple. After walking for a short distance, he stopped and said to Su Wen, Help me guard this place. No matter what happens inside, no matter what you hear, don't go over. Don't let anyone go over, understand? Young Master One, what are you doing? Su Wen was alarmed. She immediately knew that Zhou Wen's trip wasn't as simple as taking a look at the Torch Dragon Temple. Kill Torch Dragon. Zhou Wen didn't hide it from her. He couldn't hide it anyway. With that said, he headed for the tunnel. Su Wen was taken aback. By the time she reacted, Zhou Wen had already walked into the tunnel. Although he had been here countless times in the game, it was a different experience in real life. After all, he was not in the game now. If he made a mistake, he might lose his life. Standing in front of the metal temple's door, Zhou Wen took a deep breath and closed his eyes, allowing his body and mind to calm down. It wasn't to adjust himself to his best state, but to make himself feel normal. If something required him to use 120% of his abilities to complete it, it was a gamble. However, Zhou Wen didn't need to gamble. As long as he did what he needed to do normally, he could obtain the results he wanted. When he opened his eyes, Zhou Wen had completely calmed down. He summoned his armor and six-winged and prepared to release the other crystal mirror at any time. Holding the golden battle god halberd, Zhou Wen pushed open the temple's door. With the creaking sound of the metal door being pushed open, Zhou Wen saw the snake-like torch dragon youngling. It was even more ferocious and terrifying than in-game. It was also larger, and its aura was even more oppressive. As the poisonous smoke lingered, Torch Dragon opened its huge mouth and spewed out a surging wave of poisonous smoke. The 6 wings on his back flapped as Zhou Wen instantly circled behind Torch Dragon at an unbelievable speed. Torch Dragon swept its tail, but everything was under Zhou Wen's control. His body moved in the most perfect trajectory, dodging Torch Dragon's repeated attacks before finally approaching its body. The golden battle god halberd stabbed into its scales with a golden divine glow. Blood immediately flowed out of the golden halberd's body as Torch Dragon let out a terrifying scream. In an instant, rows of lantern-like eyes lit up on its body. Each eye reflected light like a mirror, illuminating the entire metal temple. The 6 wings on Zhou Wen's back and the golden battle god halberd in his hand had already been retracted. When the power of the bright torch vision world shone on his armor, it was reflected by the mirror, preventing him from being sucked into the vision world. With his experience in-game, Zhou Wen knew very well that the next minute was a critical period for him. As long as he could survive this minute, Torch Dragon Youngling would enter a weakened state. It would no longer be able to use the bright torch vision world, and all sorts of skills would be greatly weakened. Then, he would have full confidence in killing Torch Dragon. However, this minute was extremely difficult to endure even in-game. He had to ensure that he didn't make any mistakes. The activation of Transcendent Flying Immortal wasn't to kill enemies, but to escape. Zhou Wen raised his speed to the limit as he flashed behind a metal pillar. His every move had been carefully calculated. He knew how to stall for time as much as possible. Torch Dragon Youngling chased with all its might as it circled around the metal pillar. Its eyes shot out monstrous beams of light that crisscrossed the temple like laser beams. Without a moment of pause, Zhou Wen constantly moved. With the help of the metal pillar in the metal temple, he dodged Torch Dragon Youngling's fatal attacks time and time again. Seconds passed, but Zhou Wen remained as calm as ever. He knew that he was getting closer and closer to killing Torch Dragon Youngling. Lu Yunxian quickly brought people over and arranged for them to be in charge of protecting Professor Lei and company. Although it was said to be protection, it was actually surveillance. This was because the people who could tamper with the blood, apart from the people who obtained and transported the blood, were people like Professor Lei and company who were most likely to have changed the blood. Although it was unlikely that they would do such a thing if they entered themselves, who knew if someone among them would find an excuse to leave early? Therefore, while protecting them, he had to prevent any traitors from doing anything harmful to them. "Why are you here? Where's young Master One?" After Lu Yunxian arranged for his men, he ran over to see Zhou Wen. However, just as he arrived at the tunnel, he saw Su Wen standing alone at the entrance. "Young Master Wen has entered," Su Wen said. "Why didn't you enter with him?" Lu Yunxian already felt that something was amiss. "Young Master Wen didn't let me in. He even said that no one is to enter. He wants to kill Torch Dragon," Su Wen answered truthfully. Lu Yunxian's expression changed drastically. "Why didn't you stop him? You should know how terrifying Torch Dragon is. Although young Master One is very strong, the chances of him surviving a creature like Torch Dragon are still very slim." As Lu Yunxian spoke, he heard a sharp cry coming from the direction of the Torch Dragon Temple. Chapter 567. "No good, something really happened," Lu Yunxian said as he rushed into the passageway without any hesitation. "Young Master Wen said that no matter what happens, we can't go over." Su Wen pulled Lu Yunxian back. "Look at the situation now. If young Master Wen dies inside, how are we going to explain it to Adjutant and the Overseer? Besides, young Master Wen saved our lives." Lu Yunxian shook off Su Wen and rushed in. Su Wen gritted her teeth and rushed in. She couldn't care less. As the two of them rushed over, they heard the terrifying screams and the rumbling sounds of collisions. They became even more worried. From the cries, the dragon was probably enraged. The terrifying cries and collisions echoed in the passageway. Even Professor Lei and company, who were setting up various equipment on the other side, heard it. "No good, it's Torch Dragon's voice. It has been alarmed. Don't tell me Zhou Wen opened the door to the Torch Dragon Temple?" Professor Lei's expression changed as he immediately ran over. When Chu Qingyun heard that, he gloated and said, "That Zhou Wen is so arrogant. He must have thought highly of himself because he has some ability and opened the door to the Torch Dragon Temple." As researchers, they knew very well that Torch Dragon was a true mythical creature. It wasn't something Aoin could compare with. It was almost certain death upon sight. They had already sacrificed many epic companion beasts. When Professor Lay and company ran back to the fork where the Aoin stone statue was, Torch Dragon's screams suddenly stopped. Lu Yunxian and Su Wen had already run in front of the Torch Dragon temple and saw the gigantic Torch Dragon inside. This was the first time they had seen it with their own eyes. Although they knew that there was a Torch Dragon inside, they weren't the ones who had seen it, but the companion beasts they had placed inside. Now that they saw Torch Dragon's true body, its massive body and ferocious aura gave them immense pressure. In front of Torch Dragon, they felt as tiny as ants. However, in front of the Torch Dragon, there was a man dressed in silver mirror-like armor. He had 6 holy white flaming dragon wings on his back and held a golden trident in his hand. He was floating in front of the Torch Dragon. The Zhulong's body was covered in bloody scars, and the most terrifying part was below its head, where blood was gushing out like a fountain. Rumble! In front of the godlike figure, Zhulong fell to the ground with a loud bang, no longer breathing. Blood flowed everywhere in the temple. However, the figure floating above the Torch Dragon looked untainted by a speck of dust. His entire body exuded a holy radiance. After a long pause, Lu Yunxian gulped and asked in disbelief, "Young Master One, is that you? Why are you here? Didn't I tell you not to come?" After confirming that Torch Dragon was dead, Zhou unsummoned his companion beasts and revealed his body. "Sorry, it's my fault." Su Wen hurriedly apologized. "It's nothing. Since you're here, help me look around and see if there's anything left behind by the former principal and the others." Zhou searched the Torch Dragon temple in-game, but he didn't find any other exit. If the former principal and company had really come here, unless they were eaten clean by Torch Dragon, they would likely leave something behind. For example, paper, backpacks, or instruments. No matter how good Torch Dragon's appetite was, it was unlikely that it would eat such things. As for Lu Yunxian and Su Wen, Zhou didn't let them come mainly because he was afraid that they would come when Torch Dragon used Bright Torch Vision World. When that happened, it would definitely be difficult for them to escape death. Now that Torch Dragon was dead, it didn't matter if they came. Lu Yunxian and Su Wen hurriedly searched the Torch Dragon temple with Zhou. All his attention had been on Torch Dragon, so he couldn't divert his attention to observe the temple. Now that Zhou carefully sized up the temple, he realized that the layout and decorations were the same as in-game. However, the game was cartoonish, and this place looked more realistic. There were metal pillars and metal carvings everywhere, as well as some metal statues. The content of the carvings were monsters, such as the Qi, Mei, Wang, and Liang that Zhou had encountered outside. Their images were also carved on the metal walls. There were many other monsters that Zhou couldn't name. These weren't the main points of Zhou's observation. He wanted to find something, even if it was a corpse, a torn piece of cloth, or even a piece of paper. However, there was nothing. Apart from the original metal items in the temple, there was nothing else. Zhou had mixed feelings. He couldn't see the relics of the former principal and company. It was possible that they had been devoured by Torch Dragon, but it was also possible that they hadn't come here. Therefore, there was still some hope, but this hope was even more torturous. Lu Yunxian looked around the temple before saying to Zhou, "Young Master One, I can't see any problems with my naked eye. I think I need to use some equipment and the power of companion beasts to investigate. Perhaps I can discover something." Clearly, he hadn't discovered anything. "All right, go prepare." Zhou nodded. "Su Wen, help young Master One look around first. See if Torch Dragon has any companion eggs or crystals. If there are, get young Master One to put them away. There will be too many people later. It will inevitably be troublesome," Lu Yunxian exhorted Su Wen before leaving. Su Wen agreed and went to check on Torch Dragon's corpse. Zhou knew that the possibility of Torch Dragon dropping a companion egg was very low, so he didn't deliberately search for it. All he did was carefully observe the temple again and compare it with his memories in-game. Suddenly, Zhou discovered something. It was identical to the metallic style of the temple. It seemed to be something from the temple, but Zhou had never seen it in-game. Zhou walked to the side of the temple. There was a metal object placed there. It looked squarish, like a metal block. It wasn't big, about the size of a brick. Its color was the same as the metallic color of the palace, bluish-black. This metal block was placed on the head of a monster statue. The metal statue looked like a lion or a tiger, but it looked like the legendary Qilin. Zhou had seen this statue in-game, but he had never seen the metal block on its head. He reached out to push the metal block and realized that it wasn't one with the statue. It was very easy to push it. Zhou took it down and felt that it was rather heavy in his hand. It was probably much heavier than gold of the same size. The surface of the metal block was very smooth. There was nothing on it. Zhou flipped it over to look at the side, but there was nothing. However, when he flipped it to the bottom, he realized that it was somewhat different. On the metal surface, there were a few marks that divided the metal surface into 9 squares. Zhou seemed to have seen such a 9-palace grid somewhere before. On careful thought, he immediately recalled that in Qin Shiyuan's shop, the chains on the locked silver-haired companion beast were connected to a metal block. The metal block had a similar 9-palace grid. Chapter 568. However, the metal block that locked the strange person was many times larger than this. Furthermore, there were numbers in the 9 squares, but there were no numbers in the 9 squares of the small metal block. The squares were empty. Zhou thought for a moment and stored the metal block into the chaos space. He planned on studying it when he returned. Young Master 1. Companion egg. It's Torch Dragon's companion egg. Su Wen suddenly exclaimed in pleasant surprise. Zhou was just about to carefully inspect the temple to see if there were any other differences from the game when he heard Su Wen's voice. He couldn't help but be taken aback. He turned his head and saw Su Wen holding a crystal ball the size of a soccer ball. The crystal ball seemed to have billions of stars swirling in it. It looked beautiful and unreal. Young Master 1 quickly put it away. It's best not to let others see this. Su Wen handed the companion egg to Zhou. Zhou took the companion egg and looked at it. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. I've grinded so many times in-game, but I haven't been able to get a companion egg drop. I never expected it to drop in real life. Outside the tunnel, Professor Lei and company couldn't hear anything. They were all guessing what was happening inside. From the looks of it, Zhou has been killed by Torch Dragon. Chu Qinyan gloated inwardly, but he said, Teacher, Zhou is likely dead. How should we explain this to Overseerin? Professor Lei was also vexed. The Yin family definitely placed great importance on a cultivation genius like Zhou. Although this matter had nothing to do with him, he was in charge of this place after all. He ultimately had to bear some responsibility. Let's head over and take a look first. Professor Lei summoned his companion beast and prepared to scout the situation to see if Zhou could be saved. Although the chances were slim, he had to give it a try. There's no need, right? Sending a companion beast over now will only be sending it to its death, Chu Qinyan said. Just as Professor Lei was about to say something, he saw a person rush out of the tunnel. It was Lu Yunxian. Commander Lu, how's the situation inside? Zhou didn't enter the Torch Dragon Temple, right? Professor Lei hurriedly asked when he saw Lu Yunxian come out. Young Master 1 is in the temple, Lu Yunxian answered. It's over. Professor Lei felt that Zhou was definitely dead when he heard Lu Yunxian's words. Professor Lei, where is your testing equipment? Bring them over and follow me to the Torch Dragon Temple, Lu Yunxian said. What's the point of taking the instrument now? Those instruments can only be used to detect some data, and they can't save people. Chu Qinyan curled his lips and said, Lu Yunxian said with a smile. Who are you saving? Young Master Wen killed Torch Dragon. Quickly bring the equipment over and check the temple's interior. See if there are any traces left behind by old Mr. Ouyang and company. What? Professor Lei and the others thought there was something wrong with their ears. Commander Lu, are you joking with us? A professor said as he looked at Lu Yunxian in disbelief. What a joke. Young Master Wen is waiting for you in the temple. Quickly take the equipment and follow me, Lu Yunxian said. Professor Lei and company were skeptical, but seeing that Lu Yunxian didn't seem to be joking, they could only get the equipment and follow him to the Torch Dragon Temple. When they arrived outside the Torch Dragon Temple and saw the huge body lying in a pool of blood, everyone was dumbfounded. They had been studying here for a few months, but they hadn't even seen Torch Dragon with their own eyes. Now they had seen it with their own eyes, but Torch Dragon had already turned into a corpse. Chu Qingyun's expression was even more complicated. He seemed to be in disbelief and horror. Zhou Wen looked at the temple many times and confirmed that there was nothing different from the one in-game. Only then did he leave the temple and leave it to Professor Lei, Lu Yunxian, and company to handle. He returned to the encampment and waited for their test result. Although many electronic instruments couldn't be used in Zhuolu, there were still some practical detection methods that could be used, such as blood tests, fingerprint tests, and so on. Some tiny dandruff tissues could also be collected for testing. The entire team did a carpet test, but Zhou Wen couldn't do anything. All he could do was wait for the result. In Luoyang's and family, Ansheng had just returned to his office and was reporting to Tianzhua about the process of hatching a companion egg when the phone on his desk suddenly rang. Tianzhua gestured slightly and Ansheng answered the call. What? Ansheng's eyes widened as he revealed a look of shock after hearing a few words. What happened? Tianzhua frowned slightly. He waited for Ansheng to put down the phone before asking him. Young Master Wen. He went to the Zhuolu ruins. Ansheng put down the phone and said to Tianzhua with a look of shock on his face. What did he do? Tianzhua asked with a frown. From Ansheng's expression, he knew that it wasn't as simple as Zhou Wen going to the ruins. Something must have happened. Young Master Wen. He entered the Torch Dragon Temple. Ansheng said with a sorrowful expression. Nonsense. What did Lu Yunxian and Professor Lei do? How could they let him enter the temple? Tianzhua immediately slammed the table and stood up. How is he now? Is he dead? He's dead, Ansheng whispered. Tianzhua sat down on a chair and said through gritted teeth, That bastard. How can I answer to that person at home? Does he think he's a hero just because he did that? T hero. He's just an ignorant boor. Does he think his life is his own? He does whatever he wants. He doesn't think anything of others. He's selfish. Ansheng hadn't seen Tianzhua flare up in a long time. He realized that he had gone overboard. That overseer, Torch Dragon is dead. Ansheng said carefully when Tianzhua finally stopped. Tianzhua was taken aback. After a while, he stared at Ansheng and said, What did you say? Say it again? There's news from Zhuolu that young Master Wen has killed Torch Dragon. Now, they have entered the Torch Dragon Temple to begin the examination. They haven't found anything yet, Ansheng said. Tianzhua looked at Ansheng as his expression gradually turned cold. Ah Sheng, it looks like you've been very free recently? Overseer, I was stunned by the news of Torch Dragon's death. I couldn't wrap my head around it. It really wasn't intentional. Ansheng immediately felt that things were about to turn bad. Since you are so free, go guard Chess Mountain. Don't return without my orders, Tianzhua said coldly. Can I not go? Ansheng said with a bitter expression. What do you think? Tianzhua said coldly. Yes, I'll immediately set off for Chess Mountain. Ansheng stood straight and saluted, but he didn't leave. He added, Something strange happened over there. The blood they used to sacrifice to the Aoyin stone statue seems to have been tampered with. Zhou returned to the tent and took out the metal block he had obtained from the temple to study. Apart from being a little small, the metal block looked very similar to the metal block that locked the silver-haired companion egg. Chapter 569. Zhou tried using the mysterious phone's camera function to take a look at the metal block, but there was no reaction. Clearly, it was something that couldn't be stored in the phone. Zhou tried pressing the 9-palace grid again, and realized that although the grid didn't sync, there seemed to be a faint glow. Don't tell me these grids are really keys? Zhou pressed the other grids. As long as the pressure reached a certain level, every grid would emit a flash. Could it be that this metal block is really a box with a password? Then what's the password? Could it be the 10-digit number that the former principal gave me? Zhou thought for a moment and felt that something was amiss. There were no numbers on the grid. Even if the 10 numbers given by the old headmaster were really the password, he did not know which grid was 1 and which grid was 9. Typically, the number keys are arranged in order. 123 is the first row, 456 is the second row, and 789 is the third row. However, the grid is a square. I don't know which side is the first row. Zhou thought for a moment and felt that he could give it a try. If it was really arranged in order, he should be able to figure it out after a few more tries. Therefore, Zhou tried using the 10-digit password. 515-694-2730. Zhou remembered this number very clearly, but he soon realized that something was amiss. This was because the grid only had 9 keys and one of the 10 digits was a 0. There was no way to press this 0. It doesn't work at all. From the looks of it, I was overthinking things. Zhou looked at the metal block and suddenly recalled that he had seen a similar grid on the metal block that locked the silver-haired companion beast. However, there were numbers on the grid. Zhou carefully recalled the numbers on the grid. Thankfully, he had a good memory. Back then, he had looked carefully and quickly recalled that the numbers in the grid weren't arranged in order, but were messed up. 249. 715. 603. I remember that the numbers on the metal block should be distributed like this. Strange, there's number 8 in the grid. Zhou's heart stirred as he thought about the 10-digit password. Indeed, there wasn't an 8 in it. Although this didn't mean anything, Zhou suddenly felt that he might be able to give it a try. If the numbers on this small metal block are arranged in the same way as the big metal block, then it should be pressed like this. Zhou pressed the 10-digit password according to his memory, but the metal block still didn't react. Zhou turned the grid 90 degrees clockwise before continuing his attempts. When Zhou finished pressing the 10th digit, he suddenly heard a very faint click. Zhou was immediately delighted as he hurriedly looked at the metal block. Indeed, he saw a crack on the side of the metal block. With a gentle twist, the metal block split into 2. It was different from the box Zhou had imagined. The metal block was nearly solid. In the middle, there was a circular crystal that was about the size of Yuan Data's silver dollar. After the metal block cracked, the crystal fell out and landed on the table with a clang. The crystal was transparent, but there were many silver points of light inside. It was as though countless galaxies were flowing inside, making it look extremely beautiful. Zhou picked up the crystal and took a closer look. It was slightly cold to the touch, but there weren't any special energy fluctuations. On the side that Zhou saw, there was a symbol of an anchor engraved on it. This anchor symbol wasn't unfamiliar to Zhou. He had seen it a few times before. It was on the large metal block, and Gu Dian also had a similar tattoo. However, the anchor symbol was somewhat different. There wasn't a woman's side profile on it. It was just a simple anchor symbol. Perhaps it's just a coincidence? Zhou thought to himself as he flipped the crystal over to take a look. He couldn't help but be stunned. The crystal looked transparent, but when he flipped it over, he realized that it wasn't the case. There was a woman's head engraved on this side. She had a side profile and looked extremely beautiful. It was identical to the one Zhou Wen had seen on the anchor symbol in the past. It's really related, but what's the use of this thing that looks like a commemorative coin? Why did the former principal tell me the password to the box? Why didn't he just give me the box or the crystal coin? If I hadn't seen the metal block that locked the silver-haired companion beast, or if I hadn't come here to obtain the small metal block, it would be useless even if I had the password. Countless thoughts flashed through Zhou Wen's mind, but the more he thought about it, the more suspicious he became. From the looks of it, I won't be able to answer these questions if I don't find the former principal. I wonder what this crystal coin is used for. Zhou Wen studied it for a while, but he didn't discover any use for the crystal coin. All he could do was place it back into the metal block. When the cracked metal blocks were placed together, they immediately seemed to have a powerful magnetic force that sucked them together. There wasn't even a gap in the middle. Zhou Wen tried to pry it open a few times, but it didn't budge at all. It was as though there was no gap at all. This metal block is really magical. I wonder if the large metal block that locked the silver-haired companion beast can be opened with a password. Although Zhou Wen felt that it was very possible, he didn't plan on giving it a try. After putting the metal block into the chaos space, Zhou Wen was about to take out the torch dragon companion egg to see if he could hatch it when he suddenly heard someone walk into the tent. "Young Master Wen, someone from the encampment is here. They want you to head over immediately. Adjutant and wants to speak to you," Lu Yunxian said as he entered. "Got it. How's the investigation on the blood sacrifice?" Zhou Wen asked casually. "It's still being investigated. There are more than 20 people who handled it. We're investigating them one by one, but we haven't found anything yet. Adjutant and said that he will personally investigate this matter. Before he comes, no one related to this matter is allowed to leave," Lu Yunxian said. Zhou Wen was relieved when he heard that Ensheng was personally investigating the matter. He took Su Wen with him and left the underground trail in a chariot. After returning to the encampment, Zhou Wen's phone finally had a signal. Before Zhou Wen could call Ensheng had already called. "Young Master Wen, didn't we agree to wait for me to return? Why didn't you wait for me? You took all the credit for yourself. It's really sad. Didn't you go hatch the mythical pet?" "I just didn't want to distract you," Zhou Wen said with a smile. "Young Master Wen, remember to bring me along if there's such a good thing in the future. Look at me. I've worked hard for so many years, but I'm still just an adjutant. I also want to make a contribution and be promoted. The next time you go to the Cheongqi Temple, you have to bring me along. Now that I have a love letter, I should be able to help," Ensheng said. "All right, I'll definitely bring you along next time." Zhou Wen knew that Ensheng was joking. Although Ensheng was only an adjutant and didn't have a high position, he actually had a lot of authority. He could be said to be a figure with real power in the Sunset Army. Ensheng said that mainly because he didn't want Zhou Wen to take the risk alone. "Did Torch Dragon drop anything good?" Ensheng didn't say anything else since he had gotten the message across. "Companion egg," Zhou Wen answered. "Young Master Wen, you're really lucky. Overseer has killed some mythical creatures in recent years, but his luck with companion eggs isn't that great. You previously killed Love Letter with us and a companion egg dropped. Now that you killed Torch Dragon, another companion egg dropped. You're really lucky. If I were to kill a mythical creature next time, young Master Wen, you have to help me," Ensheng said with a smile. Zhou Wen thought to himself, it would be a wonder if my luck is good. I've killed countless mythical creatures in-game, but not many companion eggs dropped. By the way, young Master Wen, we've found out some information regarding the cube rankings. Ensheng's tone turned solemn. Chapter 570. Now, there are rumors in the 6 families that as long as a companion beast enters the rankings, it will have a chance to advance further in the future, Ensheng said. "What does it mean to advance further? Is it to be enhanced?" Zhou remembered that the Dharch had told him that only the first companion egg on the rankings would have a chance to be enhanced. I don't know. The rumors are very chaotic at the moment, making it difficult to determine their authenticity. However, the Xia, Zhang, and Dugu families already have mythical companion beasts on the rankings. Furthermore, some companion beasts of unknown identities have also appeared on the rankings. Didn't you realize that your six-winged guardian dragon's ranking has dropped? And Xing said, I really didn't notice that. Zhou didn't have the time to pay attention to those things. He had been studying how to kill Torch Dragon. Your six wings ranking has already dropped to 5th. The number 1 pet is no longer Death of the Underworld. It has been replaced by a companion beast named Primordial Sword Immortal. Death of the Underworld is 2nd, 3rd is Genie, 4th is Frost Giant, and 5th is your six-winged guardian dragon. Now, there are more than 30 companion beasts on the rankings. The number 1 Primordial Sword Immortal doesn't seem to belong to the 6 families. We haven't found out who it belongs to. Now, the 6 families are also having a headache. The number of companion beasts that aren't from the 6 families on the rankings is much more than they imagined. And Xing explained the details to Zhou. Why didn't you get Love Letter to try getting on the rankings? Zhou didn't care much about the rankings. At the end of the day, it was only the rankings of human companion beasts. Compared to dimensional creatures, humans were still too weak. A mere 30 mythical companion beasts were nothing in the massive dimensional mythical system. It doesn't matter if I get on it or not. The current ranking is definitely not the final ranking. The 6 families still have many companion beasts that haven't been on the rankings. The truly powerful ones are still at the back. Furthermore, although the big shots from various places don't have as much capital as the 6 families, they should still have some mythical pets. When the time comes, the rankings will definitely exceed 100. Even if my love letter is on the rankings now, it will be chased down sooner or later. After a pause, Xing added, As for you, if you obtain the Torch Dragon Companion Beast, quickly hatch it. Its ranking will definitely be very high. It might even have a chance of reaching first place. Legend has it that the higher the ranking, the greater the chance. However, you have to be careful. The stronger the mythical companion beast, the higher the difficulty of incubating it. It might even kill someone. I have a few plans for incubating mythical companion beasts. I'll send you the information later. After chatting with Xing for a while, he hung up and found a room to rest. He took out the Torch Dragon companion egg and planned on hatching it first. No one would complain about having too many mythical companion beasts. The key was that every mythical companion beast had different abilities. No matter how strong a mythical companion beast was, it was impossible for it to be absolutely invincible. In different situations, it was best to have companion beasts with different abilities. Just like how Torch Dragon's bright torch vision world was so powerful that it could instantly kill mythical companion beasts of the same level, an epic jade crystal spirit armor could restrain it. Zhou had infinite essence energy, so he naturally didn't need a special incubation plan. He directly picked up the Torch Dragon egg and began injecting essence energy to incubate it. The moment his essence energy touched the Torch Dragon egg, Zhou immediately felt a powerful suction force suck Zhou's essence energy in like a whale swallowing water. Zhou, who had infinite essence energy, felt the essence energy in his body suddenly empty. Thankfully, it was quickly replenished. If it were anyone else, they would probably have been sucked dry. As the essence energy surged in, the companion egg gradually lit up as though countless starlight was swirling. When the companion egg finally stopped absorbing Zhou's essence energy, it transformed into a beam of starlight that flew towards Zhou's left eye and fused into his pupil. If one looked carefully, there was a faint torch dragon pattern in Zhou's black pupils. As the color was similar, it was difficult for ordinary people to tell. Thankfully, the torch dragon pattern didn't affect Zhou's vision, so it didn't hinder him. Zhouwen switched on his phone and checked Torch Dragon's information. This was probably the strongest companion beast he currently had. Even the Golden Battle God Halberd was nothing compared to it. Torch Dragon Youngling, mythical, evolvable, life providence, son of the realm king life soul, eye of spacetime wheel of destiny, bright torch vision world strength, 81 speed, 81 constitution, 81 essence energy, 81 talent skill, torch eye dragon breath world king transformation companion form. I mirror it's indeed a top-notch mythical creature. All of its stats are 81. It's nice to look at. It's even stronger than the strengthened six-winged guardian dragon. Zhouwen summoned Torch Dragon in-game. The huge Torch Dragon immediately appeared on the game screen. It looked identical to the one in the game. Zhouwen tried all its skills. Apart from lacking a few skills compared to the real Torch Dragon, there was basically no difference. The few skills it lacked weren't important. The core abilities were all there. The truly invincible ones were the Bright Torch Vision World and World King transformation. The Bright Torch Vision World could reflect everything. Once one was glanced at, they would be sucked into the Vision World and vanish without a trace. World King transformation was Torch Dragon's final transformation skill. With the Eye of Spacetime appearing all over its body, coupled with the Bright Torch Vision World, it was almost an invincible instant kill. However, after using World King transformation, Torch Dragon would enter an overall weakened state. Its combat strength would plummet, and for a short period of time, its combat strength would drop to about the same level as the six-winged dragon. It would take a long time to recover. Even without using World King transformation, Torch Dragon is already a top-notch combat force. I wonder if Torch Dragon can be ranked first if it enters the rankings? Zhouwen guessed. With Torch Dragon, Zhouwen headed to the temple in-game. He wanted to give it a try. Torch Dragon against Torch Dragon, and Bright Torch Vision World against Bright Torch Vision World, would definitely be very exciting. Finally, he arrived at the Torch Dragon Temple. Without any hesitation, Zhouwen ordered his Torch Dragon to use Bright Torch Vision World. Torch Dragon's eyes immediately turned into a mirror that emitted a sun-like glow. As for Torch Dragon in the temple, it seemed to sense danger and also used Bright Torch Vision World. In the next second, a strange scene happened. The two Torch Dragons vanished into thin air, and a strange space-time vortex appeared in the temple, sweeping everything in. The game screen immediately went black. Chapter 571. A swarm of poison bats flew over. With Torch Dragon's Bright Torch Vision World, a large number of poison bats and a white shadow of poison were reflected in the Vision World. In the blink of an eye, they vanished. The large number of poison bats in the cave vanished without a trace. As expected, however, Zhouwen's expression didn't look good. This was because at least 100 to 200 poison bats had been sucked into the Vision World. They were nowhere to be seen, and their corpses were nowhere to be seen. Most importantly, the game kept indicating that the poison bats had been killed, but nothing dropped. This posed a very troublesome problem. The dimensional creatures that were sucked into the Bright Torch Vision World wouldn't drop anything, or it was possible that they would drop something, but they would disappear from the Vision World. If it doesn't drop, so be it. Zhouwen didn't feel too conflicted. This time, he took Torch Dragon to the Qiongqi Temple. Indeed, although Qiongqi was very powerful and Zhouwen couldn't defeat it with Six-Winged and the Golden Battle God Halberd, as well as the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General that restrained it, Qiongqi was still no match for Torch Dragon Youngling. However, Qiongqi's speed was too fast. It could actually avoid Torch Dragon Youngling's line of sight. However, in the state of World King transformation, Qiongqi had nowhere to escape. It was sucked into the Vision World and instantly killed. Unfortunately, nothing dropped after the Bright Torch Vision World killed Qiongqi. From the looks of it, using Torch Dragon to kill Qiongqi won't be a problem. Zhouwen was already rather satisfied with this outcome. It didn't matter if anything dropped. As long as he could kill Qiongqi, he could enter the Qiongqi temple. If he still couldn't find the former principal in the Qiongqi temple, it meant that they had most likely perished. In fact, after discovering the metal piece, Zhou already felt that the former principal and company had gone to the Torch Dragon Temple. The possibility of them going to the Qiongqi Temple was relatively low. As for why he didn't discover the former principal and company's relics, Zhou felt that they had been sucked into the bright torch vision world, leaving nothing behind. Only the metal piece had been left behind for some reason. Perhaps it was something from the temple to begin with, but the former principal and company had discovered it. Zhou wasn't in a rush to head to the Qiongqi temple, and Xing said that he would rush over in 2 days, so he planned on waiting for Xing to arrive. Since Torch Dragon was around, there wasn't much risk in killing Qiongqi. It was good to wait for Xing. Zhou was somewhat depressed when he brought Torch Dragon to grind it. If he got Torch Dragon to use Bright Torch Vision World, he wouldn't obtain any benefits even if he killed it. However, without using Bright Torch Vision World, he wasn't Torch Dragon's match in the temple. He would still be instantly killed by Bright Torch Vision World, so he could only use the old method to kill Torch Dragon. When Torch Dragon appeared in its companion form, it gave Zhou a pleasant surprise. Torch Dragon's companion form was similar to a contact lens. It appeared directly in Zhou's left eye. Under such circumstances, Zhou's left eye could also use Bright Torch Vision World. Although it was very draining, it wasn't a problem for Zhou, who had infinite essence energy. Unfortunately, this move can only be used to kill enemies. It can't drop dimensional crystals or companion eggs. Zhou planned on using Torch Dragon as his trump card. He could use it when grinding mythical creatures, but without using Bright Torch Vision World and World King transformation, his combat strength was only slightly stronger than the 6-winged guardian dragon. And Xing came quickly. Zhou waited for less than 2 days before Xing arrived at the encampment. Zhou told Xing that he had hatched Torch Dragon youngling. Then, he found a place without anyone around and demonstrated Torch Dragon youngling's abilities to him. He told him that he could use Torch Dragon to kill Qiongqi. This Torch Dragon youngling is invincible. It's very likely to reach first place on the rankings. However, before killing Qiongqi, I have to do something first, Xing said. It has something to do with the sacrificial blood? Zhou also guessed something. Xing nodded slightly. I've been receiving news from this side. I've roughly guessed who it is. If I don't deal with this fellow first, I'm afraid there will be trouble in the future. Let's go to the temple and settle this matter first. Zhou followed Xing into the temple. Everyone related to the sacrificial blood was there. When Professor Lei saw Zhou and Xing, he came over and said excitedly, "Young Master One, Adjutant N, we've made quite a bit of progress in our research recently. From the murals and statues in the Torch Dragon Temple, that palace should be related to Qiyu from the mythical era. Professor Lei, I'll report the details to the Overseer in the future. Please get everyone here first. I have something to say," Xing said. "All right, little Zhao. Get everyone here," Professor Lei said to one of his students. Soon, the student called everyone over. When everyone was present, Professor Lei frowned and asked, "Where's Qingyun? Senior brother Chu wasn't feeling well yesterday. He's been resting in the tent. I went to wake him up just now, but he seemed to be very sick." "He was a little dazed and didn't wake him up," little Zhao said. "In that case, I'll go get him." And Xing seemed to realize something as he quickly walked towards Chu Qingyun's tent. Everyone followed, and Xing pulled open the tent and saw Chu Qingyun sleeping inside wrapped in a blanket. His body seemed to be trembling like a patient with severe typhoid, and Xing walked over and pulled open the blanket. He saw Chu Qingyun curled into a ball as his body trembled. "Qingyun, what's wrong?" Seeing that Chu Qingyun seemed to be seriously ill, Professor Lei wanted to go forward to check on him. However, Xing stopped Professor Lei. He pulled out a flying dagger and threw it at Chu Qingyun. The flying dagger instantly stabbed into Chu Qingyun's body. With a bang, Chu Qingyun's body emitted a white fog. After the white fog dissipated, he realized that the thing nailed to the ground by the dagger was the corpse of a fox. "What's going on?" Professor Lei and company were dumbfounded. "Adjutanten, I'll take someone to chase after him," Lu Yunle said with a change in expression. Chu Qingyun was sleeping in the same tent as him, but he didn't notice anything amiss. "There's no need. This person isn't simple. Furthermore, the terrain in the ruins is too complicated. It's easy for something to happen. Watch the vicinity of the temple and investigate the important areas. Don't let him have another opportunity," Anxing said. "Yes." Lu Yunle went to make arrangements. The matter was already very clear. Even Professor Lei and company had roughly guessed that there was definitely a problem with Chu Qingyun's sudden disappearance and his trick. It was probably related to the sacrificial blood. "Adjutanten, I really didn't expect Qingyun to do such a thing," Professor Lei said in shame. "Professor Lei, you're being too serious. Everyone's teeth will have some moth. This has nothing to do with you." And Xing settled the matter before heading to the Cheongqi Temple with Zhouwen. Sogu. Chapter 572. The two of them walked all the way to the Cheongqi Temple. As Torch Dragon Youngling was the main force, and Sheng and Zhouwen didn't plan on entering. Before the temple door opened, Zhouwen summoned Six-Winged and Torch Dragon. At the same time, he summoned the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General. "Is your tiger-riding companion beast also at the mythical stage?" And Sheng asked curiously as he sized up the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General. "It's not at the mythical stage. It's just an epic companion beast. However, his life providence has some restraining effects on Cheongqi. With him around, it'll be easier to kill Cheongqi," Zhouwen said with a smile. These words were very honest. Without the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General, Torch Dragon could only kill Cheongqi in its World King transformation state. With the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General, there was no need to use World King transformation. A single bright torch vision world was enough. There's actually a life providence that restrains mythical creatures. Although it's at the epic stage, it's still precious enough, and Xing asked. "Yes, it wasn't easy to get it. It'll probably be difficult to find a second one," Zhouwen said as he opened the temple's door. Cheongqi was inside the temple. The moment the door opened, it pounced out. However, due to the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General's influence, its speed was greatly reduced. Under Zhouwen's orders, Torch Dragon activated Bright Torch Vision World. Cheongqi flew to dodge, but unfortunately, its speed had been greatly reduced. It failed to escape and was destroyed by Torch Dragon with a glance. Torch Dragon is just too strong. It would be illogical if it can't get first place on the rankings, and Xing praised when he saw that Cheongqi had been dealt with so easily. Zhouwen also felt that Torch Dragon was very strong, but he didn't know if it could defeat the Guardian in the White Cocoon. Unfortunately, nothing will be left after being killed by Bright Torch Vision World. Even if dimensional crystals and companion eggs drop, they can't be taken out. "The limitations are a little too great," Zhouwen said. "That's a little bad, but it's still very strong. There are some mysterious dimensional zones with many good things inside, but with terrifying mythical creatures guarding them, it's almost impossible to get the treasures out. With this Torch Dragon, it'll be much simpler. When I'm free, I'll take you to those places to take a look. We'll definitely be able to obtain a lot of good things," and Xing said. The two of them entered the Cheongqi Temple. This stone palace also had many stone carvings and murals. Many of the murals depicted battles. All sorts of creatures that looked like demons and ghosts were fighting. Humans were just cannon fodder. Those monsters were the main fighting force. The two of them carefully searched the temple several times, but they didn't find the passageway, nor did they find any traces left behind by the former principal and the others. Zhouwen didn't discover anything different in the temple from the game. It was identical. Let Professor Lei and company do the research. They are professionals in this area. If there are any clues, they will definitely be able to discover it, and Xing said. That's the only way. Zhou nodded helplessly. He now knew that the former principal and the others were definitely doomed. They had either been killed by Torch Dragon or eaten by Qiongqi. Regardless of which possibility it was, there was no need to investigate further. Zhou planned on returning to school. The outcome was no longer important to him. No matter how the former principal died, it was impossible for him to come back to life. Wait for me another 2 days. When I'm done here, we'll return together. On the way, I can take you to kill a few mythical creatures. It would be a sin not to use such a powerful torch dragon and 6-winged guardian dragon, and Xing said. What are you still doing here? Zhou asked in puzzlement. Of course, I have to find that Chu Qingyun, and Xing said. Will he still be here? Zhou felt that Chu Qingyun had definitely escaped Zhuolu. According to the time when we entered the underground ruins, he was definitely still inside. There's only one exit in the underground ruins. I set up some companion beasts at the exit, but I didn't discover him leaving. It means that he's definitely still here, and Xing said. When did you set up the companion beast? Why didn't I know? Zhou asked in surprise. It's a mediocre companion beast. Apart from being tiny, it doesn't have any special abilities. However, it's very useful for surveillance, and Xing said. Alright, I also want to know why Chu Qingyun did that. Before I came, he didn't do anything, but after I came, he took action. This is clearly not a coincidence. Zhou also felt that Chu Qingyun was targeting him and not Professor Lei and company. Otherwise, he would have long taken action. If you want to find him, you'll have to rely on my love letter, and Xing said as he summoned Love Letter. Although its name was Love Letter, it looked like a huge scorpion. There were many strange blood-colored words on its body. No matter how he looked at it, it had nothing to do with a romantic love letter. Does Love Letter have the ability to find people? Back when Tianzhua fought Love Letter, he was also present, but he didn't see Love Letter have such abilities. It doesn't have the ability to find people, but its text skills will be of some use. And Xing left the temple with Love Letter. Zhou followed beside him and saw that Love Letter would imprint a word on the wall or ground at a certain distance. The words quickly fused into the rock. There were also some words that were imprinted on the plants in the ruins, such as grass. It was unknown what they were used for. Although these words don't have any offensive power, if any creature passes by, Love Letter will naturally sense it. I've left a word imprint at all the necessary places. Unless Chu Qingyun doesn't move around in the ruins, we will be able to catch him sooner or later, and Xing explained. Take your time setting it up. I want to go to the underground sea to take a look. Zhou had nothing to do, so he wanted to go there to take a look. Zhou had already explored most of the places in the Zhuolu underground ruins. Now, even he couldn't explore the places clearly. All that was left was the underground sea. Ignoring the 9 black dragons and the cocoon in the war wagon, there was also something strange inside the sapphire sky treasure. Zhou planned on taking the opportunity to take a look. Perhaps in reality, he could discover something he couldn't see in-game. Alright, I still need a long time. You can take your time. After Zhou separated from Xing, he headed for the underground sea. Now, there weren't many things in the underground ruins that could threaten him. Even if he faced the 9 black dragons, Zhou still had the strength to fight them. Of course, that was when the 9 black dragons were chained. If they were unchained, Zhou would have to rely on Torch Dragon. When he passed by the White Desert, Zhou saw the tattered flag and the skeleton sitting under it again. Apart from the skeleton suddenly awakening the first time he passed by, the skeleton didn't react when Zhou passed by again. Zhou carefully sized up the symbol on the beast hide flag. It was indeed the symbol of an anchor. He wanted to ask the skeleton what their flag meant, but unfortunately, the skeleton remained motionless like a dead object. Chapter 573. I wonder how this skeleton will react if I pull out this flag? Zhou only thought about it. Even if he pulled out the flag, he didn't know what use it was. After sizing up the vine flag and beast hide, Zhou suddenly realized that the sand beneath the flagpole was somewhat different from the white sand elsewhere. He walked over and took a closer look. He saw that the sand beside the flagpole was very large. Some were about the size of a ping-pong ball, while the smaller ones were the size of glass beads. Furthermore, their shapes weren't very regular. As it was cartoonish in-game, he couldn't see it clearly. However, now that Zhou took a closer look, he realized that the white sand wasn't sand, but bones. Could it be that this white desert isn't really a desert, but a manifestation of bones? Zhou looked at the boundless white desert and couldn't help but shiver. If the sand in this desert was really bone sand, how many creatures had died here to form such a huge desert? Furthermore, why would their bones turn into sand? This was clearly unusual. Zhou grabbed a handful of sand and looked at it carefully. The more he looked at it, the more it looked like it was formed from shattered bones. However, the size and shape of the sand were very similar. He didn't know how it was formed. Could it be that this is actually the main battlefield of Zhuolu back then? The creatures that died in the battle were all buried here? Zhou thought for a moment and summoned the guardian dragon and torch dragon. He got the two monster-level creatures to dig up the sand to see if there was anything underneath. Back in the Zhuolu battle, apart from humans, any creature that participated was at the mythical stage. Furthermore, they had quite a number of treasures. If he could dig out one or two of them, even if they were broken, they would still be of great value. Six-winged and torch dragon were huge in size and had immense strength. They were even more powerful than excavators. The guardian dragon dug with its front claws and dug out a huge pit in a few moves. Torch dragon plunged into the sea of sand and swam under the sand. Soon, it parted a large patch of sand, revealing a ravine. At the spot where Torch Dragon had dug open, something seemed to be revealed. It looked like a sharp horn of an elephant's tusk. Zhou hurriedly ordered Torch Dragon to continue digging. Torch Dragon and Six-Wing dug a few times and dug out a huge pit that was more than 10 meters deep. Many things were revealed, but they weren't teeth, but a huge skeleton. What they saw was only the tip of one of the sternum's thoracic bones. There were 2 rows of such sternum on the skeleton. There were at least 20 to 30 of them. The entire skeleton looked like a cow's bone, but it was many times bigger than a cow's bone, and it didn't have a cow's skull. Apart from the skeleton, there was nothing else. However, this made Zhou feel a little expectant. Since there were really monster bones below, there might really be something left behind from the battle. Or perhaps there were dimensional crystals left behind. If he could dig out a few primordial energy skill crystals, he would be rich. Zhou got Six-Winged and Torch Dragon to constantly dig in the desert, hoping to find something. Before long, they dug up quite a number of bones under the desert. The bones were of different shapes and sizes, so they likely didn't belong to the same creature. However, the strange thing was that the bones were crystalline like jade. They seemed to have turned into fossils, but they maintained a moist texture. Many bones immediately shattered when the Six-Winged and Torch Dragon touched them. Unlike ordinary bones, these bones were like tempered glass. Once they shattered, they would turn into tiny particles that scattered in the white sand, becoming a part of the white desert. Indeed, this white desert is a bone sand desert. Zhou was secretly alarmed. From the scale of the white desert, the battle back then was far more tragic than they had imagined. There were definitely many mythical creatures that had died here. The 2 monsters, Six-Winged and Torch Dragon, dug holes in the sea of sand, almost overturning half of the desert. Unfortunately, apart from some bones, everything seemed to have rotted and melted. It was unknown why the bones were preserved, but most of them had turned into bone sand. It was likely that those that hadn't turned into bone sand were the bones of extremely terrifying mythical creatures. Suddenly, Six-Winged seemed to have dug up something as it roared at Zhou. Zhou went over and saw a rhinoceros head appear in the sand pit that Six-Winged had dug up. However, this head was much bigger than the rhinoceros on Earth. It was like a locomotive. Although it had also turned into jade, the rhinoceros head was rather intact. It was still lifelike, and there were no wounds on its head. Zhou got Six-Winged and Torch Dragon to dig together. Soon, they dug out the rhinoceros's body. Although there were many bones here, this was the first time a giant rhinoceros had been preserved so completely. However, this giant rhinoceros was like a jade sculpture. Its body had completely turned into jade, and there was no vitality in it. It was definitely impossible for it to come back to life. Wait, I don't see any injuries on its body. How did it die? Zhou carefully sized up the rhinoceros and suddenly had an idea. Perhaps the bone sand in the White Desert isn't purely bone, but the creatures here have been affected by some unknown force. Their bodies are like this rhinoceros, turning into fossils before shattering and turning into bone sand. The more Zhou thought about it, the more he felt that he was right. What kind of terrifying power could turn so many creatures into bone sand? Is the expert who used this power on Yellow Emperor's side or on Chio's side? Zhou guessed. For the rhinoceros to be able to remain intact after being petrified and not turn into bone sand like ordinary creatures, it was obvious that it had been extraordinary when it was alive. Even so, it still couldn't escape the invasion of the terrifying power and turned into its current state. Zhou reached out and knocked on the rhinoceros's body a few times. With 2 clangs, the sound was extremely crisp, as though he had knocked on jade or bones. The rhinoceros's body didn't shatter due to external forces. Torch Dragon and Six-Winged dug nearby, but apart from some fragile petrified bones, they didn't discover anything. It can't be? Could it be that those who participated in the battle back then were all primitive creatures that only knew melee combat? They didn't even have any divine weapons? Zhou was somewhat disappointed. Crack, crack, cracks suddenly appeared on the rhinoceros's body as more and more appeared. It looked like it was about to shatter. Perhaps Torch Dragon and Six-Winged struck it when they were digging. What a pity. It's good to bring it back as a specimen. After all, it's a mythical creature from ancient times. To be able to participate in such a battle is definitely no trifling matter. Just as Zhou was feeling regretful, the jade-like rhinoceros had already shattered. Something fell out from the rhinoceros's cracked abdomen. It was different from the bone sand that had shattered. The item was still squirming. Sogu. Chapter 574. Zhou saw that the thing that fell out of the rhinoceros's stomach was actually a living creature. Furthermore, it looked like a snail no matter how he looked at it. The snail shell was about the size of a fist, and its entire body was translucent and translucent. As for the snail's exposed body, it was as transparent as a flawless crystal. After the snail fell out, it slowly crawled on the sand while dragging its shell. Zhou quickly retreated as though he was facing a formidable enemy. At the same time, he ordered the Six-Winged Guardian Dragon and Torch Dragon to attack the snail. Zhou didn't know the origins of this snail, but he knew one thing very well. In such a terrifying ancient battle, even a powerful creature like the rhinoceros had been petrified. This snail had actually survived in the rhinoceros's stomach. No matter how it did it, it was definitely not a simple character. Of course, this fellow might have crawled in later, but no matter what, Zhou wasn't willing to take the risk. Torch Dragon and Six-Winged spewed out dragon breath at the snail at the same time. The snail immediately shrank into its shell. 2 terrifying dragon breaths spewed out at its shell, melting the surrounding bone sand and forming a huge pit. However, after the dragon breath stopped, the snail shell in the pit remained unharmed. The combined attacks of the 2 mythical pets failed to break through the snail shell. Bright Torch Vision World. Zhouwen increasingly found the snail terrifying as he ordered Torch Dragon to use its Wheel of Destiny. Torch Dragon's eyes turned into mirrors as it looked at the snail in the pit. However, in the blink of an eye, the snail had vanished. The power of Bright Torch Vision World absorbed a large amount of bone sand. A large amount of bone sand vanished as though a huge pit had been dug out of thin air in the desert. Zhouwen carefully sized up his surroundings, but he didn't find any traces of the snail. Was it sucked away by the Bright Torch Vision World, or did it escape? Zhouwen didn't dare be careless as he summoned a few of his important companion beasts, just to be safe. If he let it escape, then it would be too scary. Torch Dragon and company stood around Zhouwen and constantly searched the nearby desert, but they didn't find any traces of the snail. Now, Zhouwen missed Truth Listener. If he had Truth Listener's ability, he wouldn't have to be so passive. Now, he could only be more careful. After waiting for a while, the snail didn't appear. Zhouwen felt that it was most likely sucked away by the Bright Torch Vision World with the bone sand. Otherwise, there was no reason for it not to appear. However, Zhouwen didn't dare be careless. He continued watching carefully. At the same time, he didn't dare stay in the bone sand desert any longer. He headed straight for the underground sea. Along the way, he didn't see the snail appear. When he arrived at the seaside, he didn't enter the sea. Instead, he watched the sapphire sky from the side. The huge gemstone-like sky was truly spectacular, and Xing said that their people also wanted to study the sapphire sky, but the companion beasts they sent would inexplicably die once they approached the sapphire sky. After losing quite a number of companion beasts, they didn't gain anything. All they could do was give up exploring the sapphire sky. Zhouwen looked at it for a while, but he didn't discover anything in the sapphire sky. The gem-like crystal was filled with azure blue, making it look beautiful and deep. He attempted to summon a poison bat companion beast and get it to fly towards the sapphire sky. Previously in-game, Zhouwen had already experimented many times. In-game, he could only see a faint blue light flash across the poison bat's body when it approached a certain distance from the sapphire sky. Then it would die. He couldn't see anything. This time, Zhouwen wanted to take a look in reality, hoping to find some clues. Indeed, the moment the poison bat companion beast approached the sapphire sky, its body suddenly flashed with a blue light. In the next second, the poison bat's body turned into a blue transparent crystal. After it exploded into pieces, it fell into the underground sea. Zhouwen looked carefully, but he still failed to discover where the blue light came from. From his point of view, it seemed to be produced by the poison bat's body. He tried a few more times, but the result was the same. He couldn't see the problem in reality. Suddenly, Zhouwen felt his neck itch. He reached out to scratch it, but when his fingers touched his skin, he jumped in fright. When his fingers touched the itchy spot on his skin, he felt that it was extremely hard. It wasn't the feeling of skin, but rather like jade. Not good. Zhouwen thought of something and hurriedly summoned the crystal mirror to look at his neck. When he did, his expression changed drastically. On the right side of his neck, there was a protrusion the size of a fingernail. The protrusion was very strange. It wasn't red or swollen, and it was translucent like jade. There were spiral patterns on it, making it look like the shell of a tiny snail. Is it that snail's doing? Without any hesitation, Zhouwen pulled out his orchid blade and slashed at his neck, slicing off the jade-like flesh. When he saw that there was no jade-like beneath the flesh and that there was still tender flesh and bright red blood, he felt a lot more at ease. Zhouwen sliced the piece of flesh that had been sliced off with the orchid blade. At the same time, he summoned the Fire Furnace Queen and burned it to ashes. Although the wound on his neck still hurt, it wasn't itchy anymore. Zhouwen felt much better. With Zhouwen's current physical strength, the tiny wound quickly shrank and stopped bleeding. It wouldn't take long for it to heal on its own. However, after a while, Zhouwen felt the wound itch again. He thought that it was the itch of a scar forming, but when he touched it with his finger, his expression immediately turned ugly. He picked up the crystal mirror and looked at it. The wound had completely healed, but a snail shell-like protrusion had grown on it. Zhou Wen immediately cut it off again and summoned Dr. Darkness to inject a large amount of poison into his wound. Zhou Wen's poison resistance was already very high, so the poison couldn't take his life. He wanted to see if it could be effective on the wound, or rather, it was effective on the snail-like protrusion. However, the outcome disappointed him. Dr. Darkness injected him with a large amount of poison. Zhou Wen was almost unable to take it, but it didn't take long for the wound to automatically heal. A spiral-shaped jade protrusion grew out. A strange itch also touched Zhou Wen's nerves, making him have the urge to grab it. "I'm in big trouble." Zhou Wen knew that the matter was somewhat serious. It was definitely the snail's doing, but he didn't even know where the snail was, nor did he know when the snail had attacked him. He switched to zero taboo and used all sorts of methods to deal with the jade protrusion, but none of them worked. No matter what he did, the jade protrusion would grow back. Furthermore, it became more and more itchy, making Zhou Wen have the urge to chop off his neck. Damn it, Truth Listener is still evolving. Otherwise, its evil nullification life soul might be useful. Zhou Wen felt his neck itch more and more. He clenched his fists, but he didn't dare grab it. He was afraid that the more he grabbed, the worse it would be. Chapter 575. His neck itched more and more. Zhou Wen knew that he couldn't delay any longer. He had to think of a way to resolve this problem. Perhaps the Dharch knows what it is. Zhou Wen wanted to leave the Zhuolu battlefield and return to the encampment where there was a signal to contact the Dharch to see if he could obtain any useful information about the snail from her. However, after taking a few steps, Zhou Wen felt his neck itch unbearably. He wished he could cut off his neck. What was even stranger was that Zhou Wen felt his body become heavy. It was as though an invisible boulder was pressing down on him, making every step he took extremely difficult. He left deep footprints in the bone sand as his calves sank in. Zhou Wen knew that this wasn't an illusion. There was really something pressing down on him. The pressure could be clearly felt, but there was nothing on his body. Plop! Zhou Wen's body was pressed into the bone sand. He tried his best to stand up, but he couldn't move. Not only could he not move, but the itch on his neck intensified. He couldn't even scratch it. "I have to leave this place as soon as possible." Zhou Wen got Six-Winged and Torch Dragon to pull his body, hoping to get them to carry him back. However, with Six-Winged and Torch Dragon's immense strength, they couldn't move him. Or rather, they didn't dare use too much strength, afraid that they would snap his body. Indeed, I'm not suited to interdimensional zones in real life. Something happens every time. Zhou Wen regretted digging around. Perhaps it was because he had just obtained a powerful companion beast like Torch Dragon that he had gotten a little complacent. He thought that with Torch Dragon around, he could deal with any sudden situations, but he didn't expect to not have a chance to use Torch Dragon. All Zhou Wen could do was endure the itch and get Torch Dragon to burrow under the bone sand, hoping to prop up his body. However, when Torch Dragon tried its best to prop up Zhou Wen's body, it nearly squashed Zhou Wen's body flat. It still failed to raise Zhou Wen's body by even a centimeter. In the end, Zhou Wen was pressed down on Torch Dragon's back. When Torch Dragon retreated, Zhou Wen immediately fell into the sand pit and remained motionless. Zhou Wen had thought of everything he could think of, but it was useless. He was pressed down there, unable to move no matter what. The pressure on his body was secondary, but the itch on his neck was unbearable. It almost reached the depths of his soul. All his powers were useless. All he could do was switch to the small perfection of wisdom and circulate the 8 perfections wisdom life providence. It wasn't that the small perfection of wisdom's power could reduce the pressure on him, nor was it that the 8 perfections wisdom could stop the itch. Instead, the small perfection of wisdom had a benefit: endurance. Taoists cultivate the present life, while Buddhists cultivate the next life, pursuing the great liberation of the next life. Therefore, although the small perfection of wisdom was a primordial energy art that cultivated one's physique, it was different from the invincible connate divine art's primordial energy art that directly strengthened one's body. The small perfection of wisdom emphasized the mind's management of the body. The various wisdom of the 6 prajna truths allowed people to pursue spiritual enlightenment without being limited by their physical bodies. Zhou circulated the small perfection of wisdom not to relieve the pain in his body, but to divert his attention from his pain to reduce the itch. Although this wasn't a permanent solution, Zhou didn't have any good solutions. If he didn't stop the itch, he was afraid that he would go crazy from the torture. Without truth listener by my side, I can't casually touch things again, Zhou thought. After circulating the small perfection of wisdom, the 8 perfections wisdom made his 6 senses sharper, making the itch deeper into his bones. Zhou knew that this was only temporary. He had read quite a number of Buddhist scriptures and knew that this was an inevitable process. He needed to first feel the pain before he could gain enlightenment and achieve the liberation of his body. Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva had once said that if hell wasn't empty, he wouldn't become a Buddha. This was a form of enlightenment and liberation. Enduring the fatal itch, Zhou constantly endured the invasion of the itch as he constantly circulated the small perfection of wisdom, hoping to achieve the great liberation of his mind. At the same time, he had absolute control over his body, preventing his body from being restricted and influenced by his 6 senses. If it were an ordinary person, they wouldn't be able to calm down and think about the meaning of the scriptures under such an itch, nor would they be able to fully focus on circulating the primordial energy art. However, Zhou was clearly not one of them. His focused talent allowed him to think and comprehend under such circumstances without being affected. The scriptures he had read previously hadn't been for nothing. Zhou had taken the right path. With the circulation and comprehension of the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra, Zhou's 6 senses became sharper. The itch on his neck still existed, but the impact on Zhou's mind was greatly reduced, making him feel less uncomfortable. This is indeed the way to go. Zhou continued researching from this angle, hoping to break through the bottleneck of the small perfection of wisdom in one fell swoop and condense a life soul. Unlike ordinary primordial energy arts that strengthened one's physique, the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra couldn't eliminate the pain in one's body. Instead, it used one's wisdom to understand the pain. Of course, being able to understand didn't mean that he could resolve it. However, the separation of his body and mind made Zhou feel less pain. The pressure on his body was still there, and the itch intensified. However, Zhou could clearly feel the 2 kinds of pain, but he felt as though his body wasn't his. The pain wasn't that unbearable. This feeling was very strange. It was clearly his body, but it didn't feel like it was his. His mind seemed to be standing in the perspective of an outsider. If I continue cultivating like this, will I really become Buddha? Zhou could sense that his body was emitting a lustrous treasure glow. And the source of this treasure glow wasn't his body, but something deeper. Zhou didn't wish to become a Buddha without desires, but in this situation, he could only continue cultivating. Otherwise, just the itch alone was enough to drive him crazy. In such an environment, Zhou quickly achieved the separation and unification of his mind and body. It sounded contradictory, but this was indeed Zhou's present state. He had absolute control over his body, but his mind wasn't restrained by his body. The pain and itch from the pressure were nothing to Zhou now. However, even if Zhou didn't mind, it didn't affect his mind. The pressure on his body was still there. His body had already been pressed into the bone sand and was about to be flattened. Once his body died, it was useless no matter how powerful his mind was. Was he to wait for Buddha to guide him into the pure land of bliss to cultivate his afterlife? Zhou clearly didn't have such an understanding. Sogu. Chapter 576. What should I do? If the small perfection of wisdom can't resolve my current predicament, it's just quenching my thirst with poison. Zhou kept thinking, hoping to find a solution. Although the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra and the 8 perfections wisdom couldn't free Zhou from the pain, it made his thoughts and senses sharper. He could observe details that he couldn't previously sense. Even without a mirror, Zhou could sense all the details of the protrusion of his neck. He could even clearly see the details beneath his skin. Under the effects of the 8 perfections wisdom, Zhou felt as though his body had turned transparent in his consciousness. He could use his consciousness to see many details in his body, or rather, to sense the minute details of his body. It wasn't true vision. This should be the 7th sense mentioned in the Buddhist scriptures, right? Zhou could clearly sense that under the spiral jade protrusion on his neck, it wasn't as simple as a lump. Beneath the lump, there were many invisible filaments that penetrated deep into his blood vessels and muscles. As they were too fine, they couldn't be seen with the naked eye. The filaments seeped into his body like a spider web, coiling around his flesh and bones. His entire neck was rooted by the filaments, and they were still spreading to various parts of his body. Even his brain was being infiltrated. Now, Zhou finally knew why it was useless to sever the lump. As the saying went, weeds would grow again if the roots weren't removed. However, it was useless to remove the lump on the surface. He had to remove the filaments inside to truly resolve the danger he was in. However, the power of the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra and the 8 perfections wisdom could only allow him to see the problem, but not solve it. Powers like Torch Dragon couldn't do anything to a power that directly penetrated his body. Unless Zhou wanted to be killed by the bright torch vision world, he had to think of another solution. Dr. Darkness was considered the best in this aspect, but even his poison couldn't destroy the filaments. It was obvious how powerful this thing was. Thankfully, I still have the substitute talisman on me. Furthermore, I still have the 6-winged guardian dragon. If I have no choice, I'll perish together with this strange snail. With the substitute talisman and the 6-winged guardian dragon, I should be able to survive. It might not be the same, Zhou thought. However, that was the last step he had to take. As long as there was a solution, Zhou didn't want to take that final step. Since the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra can let me see it, is there really no way to resolve it? Furthermore, my insights still haven't advanced the small perfection of wisdom to the epic stage, nor have I condensed a life soul. Clearly, my insights aren't completely correct. Zhou thought hard. The treasure light on his body became more and more translucent. However, under the pressure of the powerful force, his physical body was almost unable to withstand it. Even his bones were creaking from the pressure, as if they would break at any moment. Zhou could sense that a huge snail shell was pressing down on him. The snail shell couldn't be seen or touched with the naked eye, but the pressure existed. It was extremely odd. Since I can't control the body with my mind, why don't I do the opposite? If I don't even have this life, what's the point of having an afterlife? With a thought, Zhou reversed the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Zhou originally imagined that reversing the small perfection of wisdom would definitely cause his body to be severely injured, but he soon realized that after reversing the small perfection of wisdom, he could still circulate it smoothly without any obstruction. It was as though that was how it should be. Zhou's heart suddenly stirred as he recalled the 3-faced Buddha in Small Buddha Temple. The 3-faced Buddha had 3 faces, and they weren't all benevolent. They were somewhat different from ordinary Buddha statues. Could it be that the small perfection of wisdom isn't a pure Buddhist essence energy art? 3 sides. Then, what's the last side? Zhou seemed to figure out something. With the reversal of the small perfection of wisdom, the 8 perfections wisdom also changed. Zhou, who was originally in a state of separation between his mind and body, fused his spirit and body once again. The extremely itchy feeling immediately returned to Zhou, making him go crazy from the itch. However, almost at the same time, this maddening itch filled Zhou body with strength. The more his body hurt and itched, the more excited he became. Not only did he not feel pain, but he also felt a sense of joy. It was as though he had the urge to tear apart and destroy everything. Humans have three sides. One is Buddha and the other is Fiend. When Buddha appears, I'm Buddha. When Fiend appears, I'm Fiend. When Buddha and Fiend don't appear, I'm my true self, as Zhou constantly gained insight. His essence, vitality, and life providence erupted with terrifying power, causing his body to glow and emit a shocking treasure glow. It was as though an indescribable power was being nurtured in his body. Zhou wasn't unfamiliar with this power. It was the manifestation of a life soul. However, it was different from the previous life souls he condensed. The life soul this time wasn't an illusory object like Zero Taboo, nor was it a corporeal object like Lost Country. It wasn't an independent entity like the inverse Ancient Sovereign. Zhou's life soul seemed to be his body. Using his body as a life soul was something that few people had seen since ancient times. Crack, crack. As the life soul condensed, the jade lump on Zhou's neck cracked open. Thin threads that were almost invisible peeled out from his body. It was as though invisible transparent hair had automatically drilled out of his body. However, it wasn't because the thin threads had drilled out by themselves. It was because Zhou's body had undergone a strange change. He could no longer be attached to by external objects, so the thin threads had no choice but to leave his body. The thin threads left Zhou's body and condensed together. Soon, they turned into a transparent snail. On its back was a milky white snail shell. It was the one Zhou had dug out from the rhinoceros' stomach. Its small eyes sized up Zhou, who was glowing brightly, as though it was thinking about something. However, when it glanced at Torch Dragon beside it, it finally lowered its head and burrowed into the bone sand. As though it had turned invisible, it vanished in the blink of an eye. As for Zhou's body, it had already turned crystalline like jade. His entire body was like a god-fiend, as though he was nurturing immense energy. A vertical eye appeared at his glabella. At the instant the vertical eye closed, it was as though the door to hell had opened. Countless vengeful souls and wraiths were wailing and roaring inside. Zhou himself seemed to have become a demon king as his entire body emitted a terrifying aura of death. The small perfection of wisdom had finally condensed a life soul, but this life soul looked a little strange, no matter how he looked at it. Zhou dispelled his life soul and his body returned to normal. The protrusion on his neck had vanished, and the pressure on his body had vanished. At the same time, he came to a realization. Hell King, Zhou muttered to himself as he recited the name of his life soul. Sogu. Chapter 577. Zhou had naturally sensed that the snail had left, but he didn't chase after it. Transforming into the Hell King life soul could only prevent the thin threads from clinging to his body. However, if the snail exerted its strength, it could still destroy Zhou's body. The snail automatically retreated and didn't fight Zhou. This wasn't thanks to the Hell King life soul. Although the Hell King life soul's strengthening of the body wasn't bad, even Torch Dragon and Six Wings attacks couldn't injure the snail. Zhou didn't believe that the Hell King life soul could really threaten it. Therefore, Zhou was still somewhat puzzled by the snail's retreat. However, regardless, he had finally resolved a huge problem. Zhou quickly left the Bone Sand Desert and didn't dare stay any longer. He used his phone to look at his information and realized that the suffix of Constitution, Sin, was gone. The life soul condensed by small perfection of wisdom was Hell King. It had the effect of strengthening one's mind and body, but this wasn't the most important ability. The most powerful thing about the Hell King Life Soul was that it could transform one's body into a life soul. Zhou temporarily didn't know what use this ability had, so he could only slowly study it. After returning to the temple area, Zhou heaved a sigh of relief when he didn't see the snail appear. I'll just focus on gaming. Zhou refused to give up. He lay in the tent and opened the game. He went to the Bone Sand Desert in-game, and got Torch Dragon and Six-Winged to continue digging. However, Zhou was somewhat disappointed. He didn't find the petrified rhinoceros in-game. He only found a few bones, nor did he find the snail. There's actually no snail in-game? Zhou spent 2 days flipping through the Bone Sand Desert, but he still didn't find the snail, nor did he encounter any other danger. As for treasures, he didn't dig out a single one. The hidden traps Xing had set up failed to capture Chu Qinyun. It was unknown if Chu Qinyun had hidden too well or if he had already used some method to escape the ruins. And Xing didn't have the time to stay here forever. All he could do was send someone to guard the ruins and return to Luoyang with Zhou. On the way, Zhou used his phone to take a look online. Indeed, just as Xing had said, the six-winged guardian dragon's ranking had dropped to 5th, and the number of companion beasts on the list had reached 37. It was a few more than what Xing had said. Should I let Torch Dragon enter the rankings as well? Zhou had been pondering over this problem. Beep. A message came. It was from the Dharch. There's a gift for you. Use the Void Flower to receive it. Zhou immediately had an ominous feeling when he saw the message. Zhou absolutely didn't believe that the Dharch would take the initiative to give him something. I'm on the way now. I didn't bring the Void Flower with me. What gift did you give me? Zhou probed. It's a shocking invention that I researched. You lucked out, the Dharch replied. What world-shaking invention? Zhou heaved a sigh of relief. If it was just an experimental product made from chemical ingredients, Zhou felt that it wouldn't be too dangerous. You'll know when you return. The Dharch kept him in suspense. After returning to school, Zhou took out the Void Flower from the Chaos Space. Even the Void Flower couldn't open a teleportation door in the Chaos Space. Therefore, only when Zhou took it out did a teleportation door appear on the flower. Something floated out of the teleportation door. Zhou took a careful look and saw that it was a glass bottle. It was one of the items he had bought for the Dharch. It wasn't dangerous, so he reached out to catch the glass bottle. Inside the glass bottle was half a bottle of purple liquid. He didn't know what it was. He didn't know what the purple liquid was, but Zhou definitely didn't dare use it. Just as he was about to put it into the Chaos Space, he received another message from the Dharch. Have you received it? Give it to your companion beast to drink. Then, it's time to witness a miracle. No matter how Zhou looked at it, the Thearcha's tone sounded like one of those scammers on the internet. However, since he wasn't being made to drink it, Zhou didn't mind. There was no harm in giving it a try. After all, he had plenty of companion beasts. He randomly summoned a Qi and made it drink the Thearcha's medicine. Zhou stared at it with widened eyes. According to what Zhou knew, ordinary chemicals were useless against companion beasts. Instead, they had a certain effect on dimensional creatures, possibly causing them to mutate. Unfortunately, companion beasts were pure energy bodies. Their composition was relatively stable, so the possibility of mutation was very low. Chemicals were useless. However, after the Qi drank the medicine, its body seemed to be dyed. It instantly turned the same purple color as the medicine. Its body also rapidly transformed. Soon, its body underwent quite a significant change. After its transformation ended, its body didn't change much. Even the purple color faded. Zhou took a look at its information and realized that its stats had greatly increased. It even had an additional skill. It was already considered a top-grade epic. It was fine if its stats had increased, but it had actually allowed the Qi to comprehend a new skill. It went from 2 skills to 3 skills. This was quite shocking. The Dharch, what medicine did you give me? Zhouwen sent a message to the Dharch. It's a pet skill insight agent I invented. It can stimulate the potential of a companion beast and allow it to comprehend hidden talent abilities. The effects are pretty good, right? I'm guessing you definitely didn't dare let your six-winged and truth listener use it. Instead, you let an ordinary companion beast drink it. Do you regret it now? The Dharch seemed to see through Zhouwen's thoughts. It was as though she had seen everything he had done with her own eyes. Zhouwen knew that the Dharch hadn't mentioned the effects of the medicine in the beginning because she wanted to see him regret his actions. Zhouwen naturally couldn't let her have her way. Who knows if that medicine of yours is really useful? Perhaps it's only free for low-level companion beasts and useless for high-level ones? Zhouwen deliberately said. It's useless to goad me. You're too old-fashioned. If you want the pet skill insight agent, you have to exchange it with something. The Thearka's words were filled with disdain. Then I don't want it, Zhouwen immediately replied. Who knew if the Thearka's medicine had any side effects? Zhouwen found it unreliable no matter how he thought about it. How could ordinary chemicals allow a companion beast to comprehend a skill? It was likely that something else had been added to have such an effect. It's fine if you don't want the pet skill insight agent, but you have to get me the item. The Dharch sent him a list. How many pet skill insight agents can this item be exchanged for? Since he couldn't reject it, he naturally had to try his best to obtain the benefits. 1 bottle, the Dharch replied. At least 10 bottles. I should be the one who bought the ingredients you used to make these medicines, right? It's not worth that much money. Zhouwen deliberately said that, wanting to know if the Dharch had added anything else. However, the Dharch didn't answer him. 2 bottles. It's up to you whether you want it or not. Within a month, you have to buy everything on the list and send it over. Sogu. Chapter 578. Zhouwen looked at the list. The Thearka's secondary items weren't expensive. They were all relatively common items. Most of them were electronic products. He didn't know why she wanted them. When Zhouwen was in Chess Mountain, many electronic devices couldn't be switched on, much less his phone signal. Occasionally, he would turn black when he switched them on. The Dharch clearly had a way to resolve these problems, but he didn't know how she did it. Now that I have Torch Dragon, I might be able to explore Deer Terrace Pavilion first. Even if I can't get anything to drop, I can storm in to see what's inside. Zhouwen decided to head to Deer Terrace Pavilion in-game. After getting Li Xian to help him find someone to purchase the items on the list, Zhouwen entered the Chess Mountain Instance dungeon and sneaked in the direction of Deer Terrace Pavilion. With the Demon God catalog on him, Zhouwen successfully ascended Deer Terrace Pavilion. However, this time, he didn't sneak up. Instead, he summoned Six-Winged and Torch Dragon to kill all the fake fairies and immortals. After the fake fairies and immortals were killed, they revealed their true forms. They were all foxes, night owls, rats, wolves, and so on in disguise. It wasn't difficult to kill them. With the 2 mythical pets leading the way, Zhouwen quickly arrived in front of the ancient building on Deer Terrace Pavilion. He could see 6 male and female immortals drinking and having fun inside the ancient building. Among them was the fake fairy that had pursued Zhouwen previously. Upon seeing Six-Winged and Torch Dragon, the 6 false immortals inside were alarmed. However, Zhouwen didn't give them a chance. Torch Dragon's bright torch vision world activated and instantly reflected the 6 false immortals into its vision, instantly killing them. The phone indicated that he had killed a mythical fox demon, but unfortunately, they were all sucked into the vision world. Even if anything dropped, there was no way to get it out of the vision world. Zhouwen wasn't too concerned about this. After killing 6 mythical fake immortals, Zhouwen circled the first level of the ancient building, but he didn't find anything valuable. He walked up the stairs to the 2nd floor of the ancient building. When he reached the 2nd floor, he saw a gorgeous and colorful fairy sitting in the main hall. The fairy looked extremely beautiful, but she wasn't as otherworldly as an immortal. Instead, she was extremely gorgeous. When the fairy saw Torch Dragon and Six-Winged, her expression changed. She waved her sleeves and flew up. The moment she waved her sleeves, she stretched her neck and let out a cry. A terrifying sound wave shot out. Torch Dragon and Six-Winged could still withstand her sound wave attack, but the blood-colored avatar's body wasn't that strong. Its body was shattered by the sound wave. The blood-colored avatar didn't die, but the six-winged guardian dragon died on its behalf. However, the sound wave attack didn't stop. The blood-colored avatar couldn't escape death, as the game screen instantly went black. As expected, it's better to strike first. Zhou entered the game again and stormed Deer Terrace Pavilion. He killed the 6 fox demons on the first level and rushed to the second level. This time, Zhou didn't give Fairy Rainbow-Robed any chance, as he got Torch Dragon to use the bright torch vision world. She turned into a colorful bird. She looked like a colorful phoenix, but there were 9 heads on her neck. The 9-headed phoenix flapped its wings and flew out as though it had teleported, avoiding Torch Dragon's gaze. Its speed was much faster than Zhou peak speed. Seeing that the 9-headed phoenix was about to crane its neck and let out a cry, Zhou ordered Torch Dragon to use World King transformation as he rushed down the second level's exit and returned to the first level. Just as Zhou heard a sound coming from the second level, the sound stopped. At the same time, a notification appeared on his phone. Killed mythical creature, 9-headed pheasant spirit. The notification was very simple. He didn't discover any dimensional crystals, so it had probably been pulled into his vision world. Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to ascend to the second level. Indeed, he realized that the 9-headed pheasant spirit was gone. Only the weak Torch Dragon was lying on the ground. Clearly, using World King transformation had drained it greatly. This building has a total of 3 levels. The second level is the 9-headed pheasant spirit. Could the third level be the legendary demon concubine? Zhou really wanted to head to the third level to take a look. However, Torch Dragon was too weak. Without Torch Dragon, Zhou couldn't even defeat the 9-headed pheasant spirit, much less the demon concubine. Could the Dharch be that demon concubine? Zhou guessed inwardly. Without continuing upstairs, Zhou exited the game. He planned on heading to the highest level of Deer Terrace Pavilion after Torch Dragon recovered. He first went to the other dungeons and grinded all kinds of precious dimensional creatures. Just as he was grinding Medusa, his phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the number and saw that it was an unfamiliar number. It rang a few times, but it was still ringing. Zhou pressed the answer button. "Junior brother, how have you been recently?" A clean and gentle voice sounded from the phone. "Jiang Yan." Zhou nearly jumped up. Ever since they parted ways in Holy City, Zhou hadn't heard any news of Jiang Yan. He never expected Jiang Yan to suddenly call him. "I'll wait for you at the usual place," Jiang Yan said before hanging up. Zhou knew where the usual place Jiang Yan was referring to was. He couldn't wait to leave and head for Dragon Gate Grotto. When Zhou arrived at Old Dragon Cave's former laboratory, he saw Jiang Yan sitting on a stone slab. He was looking at Zhou with a harmless smile on his face. In the past, Zhou and company used the stone slab as a table to eat and play cards on. Now that he saw Jiang Yan sitting there, he couldn't help but recall the time when they were here. "Senior." Zhou opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say next. Ask him if he was doing well? This seemed like nonsense. How could he be doing well if he was constantly being pursued by the Bureau? Ask him what he had been doing recently? Zhou felt that he shouldn't have asked that question. It would put Jiang Yan in a difficult position. If Jiang Yan answered him, he would expose his whereabouts. If he didn't answer, it would hurt his feelings. However, Jiang Yan didn't seem to mind at all. He sized up Zhou and said with a smile, "From the looks of it, you've been doing well recently. Your strength has improved greatly. It seems like you have more than one mythical companion beast. You can tell? Zhou Wen asked Jiang Yan in surprise. Jiang Yan likely didn't know that he had the six-winged guardian dragon and torch dragon, but he could tell that he had more than one mythical pet. If everyone could tell, wouldn't he have no secrets? Don't worry. There aren't many humans who can tell that you have mythical companion beasts like me. Furthermore, I can't tell what your mythical companion beasts are, Jiang Yan said with a smile, as though he had seen through Zhou Wen's thoughts. Upon hearing Jiang Yan's words, Zhou Wen couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. I have something that's difficult for me. I was thinking of other solutions, but since you already have such strength, do me a favor, Jiang Yan continued. Chapter 579. What do you need my help with? Zhou Wen asked. I'm going to a dimensional zone to do something. I need someone to help me. There's a mythical creature guarding that place, and it's rather powerful. However, with your help, it shouldn't be difficult to deal with it, Jiang Yan said. All right, Zhou Wen agreed. Aren't you going to ask me which dimensional zone it is? Jiang Yan said with a smile. There's no need. No matter which dimensional zone it is, I'll accompany you. Zhou Wen shook his head. All right, go back and prepare. See you here tomorrow morning, Jiang Yan said. I don't have anything to prepare. I can leave with you now. Zhou Wen had everything he needed with him, so there was really nothing to prepare. Let's do it tomorrow. I don't know if I'll have the chance to return in the future. I want to stay here for the night, Jiang Yan said as he looked at the dilapidated laboratory. All right. Zhou Wen didn't say anything else and returned to his dorm. The next morning, Zhou Wen came to Old Dragon Cave again and saw a strange beast carriage in the laboratory. The carriage looked very ancient. Even the wheels were made of bronze. The carriage wasn't sealed, and there was a canopy on the carriage. In front of it were two huge rabbits, one black and one white. The rabbits were bigger than ordinary horses and about the same size as elephants. They lay side by side on the ground with reins attached to their bodies. Jiang Yan was already sitting in the carriage. When he saw Zhou Wen, he waved at him. Ah Wen, get in! Isn't it too ostentatious to take this carriage out? Zhou Wen said uncomfortably as he got in the carriage. If they were to leave Old Dragon Cave in this carriage, they would definitely attract the attention of countless people or even spectators. No. Jiang Yan was very certain. He held a whip and lashed it at the black and white giant rabbit. The two giant rabbits immediately moved. They were just too fast. Now, Zhou Wen finally understood what it meant to be as quiet as a virgin and as agile as a rabbit. These two giant rabbits rushed out like arrows released from the bow, pulling the car and rushing forward crazily. However, in front of him was the stone wall of the cave. Seeing that the two giant rabbits were about to slam into the mountain wall, Zhou Wen almost couldn't help but jump out of the carriage to prevent himself from dying. However, he ultimately resisted the urge to jump out of the car. He knew that Jiang Yan wasn't such a rash person. Sure enough, the two giant rabbits, one black and one white, crashed into the mountain wall. However, the mountain wall did not seem to exist. They pulled the beast carriage and rushed in. Zhou Wen saw two giant rabbits, one black and one white, pulling the beast carriage forward quickly. All he could see was streams of light flying in front of him and to his left and right. It was as though he had entered a space-time tunnel. He couldn't see anything around him as distorted light flowed everywhere. What carriage is this? Zhou Wen could tell that the beast carriage was extraordinary and asked Jiang Yan. The sun and moon are like a shuttle car. After Jiang Yan said that, he continued when he saw that Zhou Wen was still in a daze. One of the two rabbits pulling the carriage is daytime, while the other is moonlit. When they are together, they can produce the ability to travel through spacetime. Although they aren't strong enough to go against the river of time, they can traverse space and travel thousands of kilometers in an instant. It's perfect for traveling. Zhou Wen was alarmed when he heard that. These two rabbits were definitely mythical, otherwise it was impossible for them to have such abilities. Although Zhou Wen had long felt that Jiang Yan wasn't a simple person, he was still somewhat surprised that he could obtain such a sun and moon shuttle car. After a while, the sun and moon shuttle car came to a stop. Zhou Wen looked out of the car and realized that he was no longer near Dragon Gate Grotto. He was no longer even in Luoyang. There were towering mountains everywhere. There were no traces of humans as far as his eyes could see. There was a primeval forest everywhere, and the air was so clean that it seemed a little sweet. We can only walk the rest of the way by ourselves. Even if it's day and night, we won't be able to go up. Jiang Yan got out of the carriage and untied the reins. The two rabbits flashed and ran away. Aren't those your companion beasts? Zhou Wen asked in surprise. Jiang Yan shook his head and said, No, they were only temporarily hired to pull the carriage. They aren't companion beasts. Zhou Wen's expression turned odd again. To be able to hire a wild dimensional creature to pull a carriage wasn't something an ordinary person could do. Jiang Yan pointed at the mountain in front of him that shot straight into the clouds. Even the peak of the mountain couldn't be seen and said, We have to climb to the top of this mountain. However, this mountain is extraordinary. When we climb it later, we can only advance and not retreat. No matter what the situation is, we definitely can't take half a step back. Otherwise, we will be doomed. Why is that? Zhou Wen asked in puzzlement. This mountain's name is Immortal Seeking. Legend has it that there are immortals living at the top of the mountain. Anyone who wishes to become an immortal can be reborn and become an immortal body as long as they can climb to the top of the mountain. Although this is only a legend, this mountain is indeed extraordinary. It has a terrifying taboo power protecting it. After stepping on this mountain, one will definitely die if they take a step back. There's no reason for it. That's the rule of this mountain, Jiang Yan said. I wonder if my zero taboo can restrain Immortal Seeking Mountain's taboo. Zhou Wen thought to himself, but he didn't plan on giving it a try. All he did was look around the foot of the mountain, hoping to see if there was a tiny palm symbol. Unfortunately, he didn't see the tiny palm symbol. All he saw was a stone staircase spiraling above the mountain. It was like a staircase that pierced into the clouds, with no end in sight. There will be many difficulties and obstacles along the way, but with your willpower, I believe there won't be any problems. You just need to remember not to retreat, Jiang Yan said as he stepped onto the stone steps. Zhou Wen followed him up the stone step. Just as he stepped onto the stone steps, he immediately felt an invisible force pull at his body, causing his body to sink slightly and nearly fall onto the stone step. Every step Zhou Wen took and every stone step he ascended made him feel as though he was carrying a mountain. After taking a few steps, the sweat that flowed out of his body almost drenched his clothes. Jiang Yan, who was in front of him, was in a similar state. His hair was already drenched. The power on the stone steps was very strange. It didn't constantly become stronger or weaker. This power was just right, reaching the limits of what Zhou Wen's body could withstand. In other words, Zhou Wen had to use all his strength with every step he took. He had to use all his strength to move forward. After taking a few steps, Zhou Wen felt that he had expended a lot of his strength. However, the power on the stone steps seemed to possess intelligence. It weakened relatively, but Zhou Wen still had to use all his strength to walk. The first step was already his limit. If it were someone with a weak will, they would quickly have their will collapse and have thoughts of retreating. However, Jiang Yan had said that he absolutely couldn't retreat here. Once he did, he would definitely die. Chapter 580. They walked up the mountain step by step. Although they could walk no matter how tired they were, looking at the endless stone steps that pierced into the clouds still left them in despair. As Jiang Yan walked in front, he said, "The ancients believed that there are immortals in the sky. Only by meeting immortals at high altitudes can one obtain the great Tao heritage. Therefore, since ancient times, the East, West, North, and South districts have myths and legends regarding the heavens. For example, in the West District fairy tales that we are more familiar with, a young man planted magic beans and ended up growing a divine vine. Then, he climbed up the divine vine to the giant castle in the sky. There's also the legend of our East District's creation tree. Those are all plants. They don't seem to have anything to do with mountains, right? Zhou said. There are mountains too. Don't many gods in myths and legends live on mountains? For example, the gods of Mount Olympus, the Kunlun Mountain Immortal Palace, and the Buzhou Mountain that connects heaven and earth, Jiang Yan said as he walked. Zhou and Jiang Yan chatted, not because they really wanted to come to any conclusions. However, the mountain was just too tall. They had to use all their strength with every step they took, and they couldn't walk fast. They didn't know when they would be able to climb up, so it was a little boring. Furthermore, talking could also eliminate some negative emotions, preventing them from feeling despair. I wonder if these legendary things have corresponding dimensional zones? If there are, I really want to get a few magic beans to plant them. Then, I'll go to the giant castle in the sky to see if there's really a goose that lays golden ducks, as well as the beautiful girl trapped in the cage, Zhou said. I'm not too sure if there are magic beans, but I've seen the mulberry divine tree of the 3 divine trees overseas, Jiang Yan said. Is there really a mulberry divine tree? Are there really 10 sun golden crows on that tree? Zhou asked curiously. I don't know if there is a golden sun crow, but that tree grows in the middle of the sea. It's so tall that it's impossible to climb. It's full of sun-like fruits. Just looking at it from afar, it's almost blinding. No human can go near it. Jiang Yan paused for a moment before continuing. Legend has it that in ancient times, Hou-Yi stood on the Fusang divine tree and shot down the 9 suns. If the legend is true, then Hou-Yi is definitely the top expert among humans now. If Hou-Yi truly existed, does that mean that Zhu Rong, Gong Gong, Quafu, and the other legendary, powerful beings also exist? If we can also pull a bow and shoot the sun in the future, drink rivers from our mouths, and break mountains with one strike, how delightful would that be? Zhou felt a little excited when he thought of that scene. Why wait for the future? If your mythical pet is offensive, it shouldn't be a problem to slice off a small mountain, right? Jiang Yan said with a smile. It's possible, but it's such a small mountain. Even if it's sliced off, I don't find it interesting. At the very least, it has to be able to split the 5 famous mountains into 2 or slice off Mount Everest from its root. That would be interesting, Zhou said. To reach that realm, I'm afraid it's impossible for ordinary mythical creatures, Jiang Yan said. The 2 of them talked as they climbed the mountain. They felt that their physical strength was being consumed even more. They were panting heavily after every few steps, and their clothes were soaked through. It was as if they had just been fished out of the water. What are you going to do at the top of the mountain? Don't tell me you also want to seek immortality? Zhou joked. I really want to seek immortality, Jiang Yan said seriously. Zhou was slightly taken aback as he asked in disbelief, What immortality? Aren't the so-called immortals dimensional creatures? Not completely. On this mountain peak there's a cocoon. The creature in the cocoon can be said to be a dimensional creature, but it's not completely one, Jiang Yan said. Guardian? Zhou exclaimed. You actually know the name of a guardian. That explains it. That's right. Although there's no immortal on this mountain peak, there's a guardian. My goal is that guardian, but there's a terrifying mythical creature guarding it. I'm not its match alone, so I can only find help. Jiang Yan didn't seem surprised that Zhou knew the name of a guardian. Why are you looking for a guardian? Kill it? Or is there any other way to take it for yourself? Zhou was somewhat worried that Jiang Yan would also know about spirit casting. If he also knew spirit casting, Would he want to take the same path as Wang Mingyuan when looking for a guardian? This wasn't impossible. Before Wang Mingyuan broke through the realm, he had given Jiang Yan all his research information and experience. Perhaps there was spirit casting in it. I'm afraid it's impossible for us to kill a guardian with our current strength. However, I've studied the information left behind by teacher. As long as the method is right, we can obtain the loyalty of a guardian. Since you know the name of a guardian, you should have read the information, right? Jiang Yan said. I haven't read the information, but I've seen a living guardian. Zhou told Jiang Yan about Hardadef and the six-winged seraphim. Senior brother, you have to be careful. I'm afraid those guardians aren't reliable, Zhou said. Jiang Yan smiled again and said, what in this world is absolutely reliable? It's just like doing business together. There are many people who are betrayed by their partners, and there are many who have conflict. Don't tell me you can't earn money without doing business? It's just taking what you need. Even if it's blood relatives like parents and brothers, there are many who turn against each other. Don't treat a guardian as your personal property. Treat it as a partner. Some things naturally won't be so unacceptable. Zhou was slightly taken aback. What Jiang Yan said wasn't without reason, but Zhou wouldn't choose to take this path because he had too many secrets that he couldn't let others know. Jiang Yan continued, since this is a path to break through to the epic stage, regardless of whether it's right or wrong, someone has to walk through it to know. I'll give it a try first. The two of them chatted as they walked and exchanged some information about guardians. According to Jiang Yan, there was indeed an azure silk cocoon on the mountaintop. The guardian inside might be more compatible with his cultivation attribute. Perhaps he had a chance of contracting the guardian inside. However, according to the information left behind by Wang Mingyuan, the most basic condition to form a contract with a guardian was to defeat the mythical creature guarding the cocoon. Otherwise, there was no way to approach the cocoon, much less contract it. The mythical creature guarding the azure silk cocoon on the mountaintop was a white guardian beast. It looked like a horse or a goat. It had 2 horns and vertical eyes and could speak human language. Every word it said could become reality. Previously, when Jiang Yan went up alone, the guardian beast only glanced at him and said, "Scram." Jiang Yan rolled down the mountaintop. He couldn't control his body and nearly fell to his death. Jiang Yan did a lot of research and guessed that the guardian beast might be the legendary Bai Zhe. Chapter 581. It's impossible for us to kill it with our current strength. However, I have a way that might be able to hold it back. Jiang Yan revealed his thoughts. Jiang Yan had an epic companion beast named Soundless Snake. The Soundless Snake could block the transmission of sound in a small area. As long as they couldn't hear Bai Zhe's voice, its sound powers wouldn't be of any use. Then, Jiang Yan prepared a mythical dark domain Heavenly King. It was a mythical companion beast overseas. It had the ability to transform a certain area into a dark domain that could restrain all kinds of vision-type abilities. As long as Bai Zhe was in the dark domain, its eyes would also be effective. Without language and vision, Bai Zhe's strength would be greatly reduced. Furthermore, it wouldn't be able to see what Jiang Yan was doing. At this moment, as long as Zhou could hold back Bai Zhe and attract its attention, Jiang Yan could take the opportunity to head to the azure silk cocoon and attempt to contract a guardian. Are all vision-type skills unusable in the dark domain? Zhou asked. That's probably the case. I haven't discovered any vision-type abilities that can be used in the dark domain, Jiang Yan said. I wonder if Torch Dragon's bright torch vision world can be used in the dark domain? Zhou thought. The stamina expenditure was just too severe. The two of them felt too exhausted and stopped talking as they walked forward silently. Zhou gave it a try and switched his life soul to 0 taboo. He realized that the strange power on his body immediately vanished without a trace. He immediately felt much more relaxed and couldn't help but be overjoyed. When Zhouwen saw the terrifying glow emitted by the zero taboo crystal, he knew that the taboo here was no trifling matter. He hurriedly deactivated zero taboo and the strange power returned to Zhouwen, making every step he took suffer. Although zero taboo is useful, it's only a primordial body. The amount of time it can last is too short. If I can advance to a perfect body, I might really be able to use zero taboo. I might be able to constantly restrain all kinds of taboos in the world. Zhouwen thought to himself how he could raise zero taboo to a perfect body. Currently, among Zhouwen's life souls, only the inverse ancient sovereign was an evolved body. The rest were still primordial bodies, so raising their levels was imperative. Zero taboo is used to restrain the taboo laws of various mysterious lands. Does that mean that as long as I understand those mysterious taboo laws, I can raise zero taboo? Zhouwen didn't know if this guess could be established, but there was no harm in giving it a try. Coincidentally, the taboo power of Immortal Seeking Mountain was extremely powerful. Zhouwen had nothing else to do, so he could study it. Zhouwen switched his essence energy art to the small perfection of wisdom. Under the effects of the 8 perfections wisdom life providence, his senses became extremely sharp as he sensed the taboo power of Immortal Seeking Mountain. The 8 perfections wisdom was unable to resist the taboo power. Zhouwen only wanted to sharpen his senses so that he could better understand the effects of the taboo power. The taboo power of Immortal Seeking Mountain was indeed very strange. This power wouldn't harm anyone. It would be strong if you were strong and weak if you were weak. It happened to be maintained at a peak that one could withstand. It made one have to use all their strength with every step they took. They couldn't be hesitant, or their legs might go limp and they would fall down the mountain path on the spot. Although the path of seeking immortality was difficult, as long as one's willpower was firm, it wasn't a dead end. However, this path seemed to have no end. Every step was extremely difficult. Even a person with a firm will would inevitably weaken after a long period of time. Therefore, very few people could truly reach the mountaintop. Zhouwen sensed the changes in his body and found it strange and unpredictable. He couldn't figure it out. If I take a step back, what kind of changes will this taboo power undergo? Just as this thought surfaced in Zhouwen's mind, he immediately strangled it to death. Everything is inferior. Only survival is high. I can't take risk. I absolutely can't take risk. Zhouwen hurriedly firmed his belief and continued walking forward. When the sun was about to set, the two of them had only climbed 1,000 meters. When they looked up, they still couldn't see the top. The stone steps were like coiling dragons coiling around the clouds. Just looking at them made them feel a little dizzy. Just as Zhouwen was about to take out a bottle of water to replenish himself, he heard Jiang Yen say, "The Immortal Opportunity Stone is up ahead. After passing it, you have to be careful. If you continue going up, there will be external factors that will tempt you. You have to remember that no matter what happens, you can't retreat. Otherwise, only death awaits you." Jiang Yen spoke so solemnly that Zhouwen knew that it wouldn't be easy to deal with it. He asked, "What external factors will there be?" "That's hard to say. Everyone's situation is different. I'll only know after trying," Jiang Yen answered. Zhouwen looked up and indeed, he saw a small platform beside the mountain path. On it was a boulder with the words "Immortal Opportunity" engraved on it. However, there was nothing special about the stone. It was identical to an ordinary mountain rock on Immortal Seeking Mountain. There were only 2 more words engraved on it. Soon, the two of them passed by the Immortal Opportunity Stone. After taking a few more steps, Zhouwen didn't feel anything different from before. Just as Zhouwen was about to say something, he saw Jiang Yen suddenly turn his head and slap him on the head. His expression was ferocious as he said coldly, "You've been tricked. Die." The mountain path was narrow to begin with, allowing only one person to walk alone. When Jiang Yan's palm struck down, It emitted a resplendent divine light as though a sun had smashed down. Zhou had nowhere to hide. Apart from retreating, he could only take Jiang Yan's palm head-on. Zhou expression remained unchanged as he continued moving up the stairs with one foot. At the same time, he used his arms to protect his head to block Jiang Yan's palm. Zhou still remembered that Jiang Yan had said that no matter what happened, he couldn't retreat. Furthermore, he believed that Jiang Yan wasn't such a person. With Jiang Yan's character, even if he really wanted to harm him, he would have explained it to him. It was impossible for him to launch such a sneak attack. Therefore, Zhou continued walking forward without any intention of counterattacking. If it was just an illusion, he would hit the defenseless Jiang Yan if he counterattacked. Indeed, Jiang Yan's palm passed through his arm before Jiang Yan's body turned to dust. Zhou looked up and saw that Jiang Yan was still walking in front of him without turning his head. If Zhou hadn't thought it through at that instant and had allowed his body to naturally counterattack, Jiang Yan would probably have died from his palm strike. What kind of crappy immortal opportunity is this? It's basically tempting the devil in my heart, Zhou thought. Chapter 582. Jiang Yan walked in front while Zhou followed behind. They moved up step by step. After passing the immortal chant stone, it was another long and boring mountain climbing journey. The two of them only occasionally drank some water and ate. They basically didn't stop. Even so, it was already 4 days later when they reached the mountainside. In just 4 days, the two of them had lost a lot of weight. Their eyes and cheeks had sunk in, making them look like skin and bones. Both of them were quite handsome, but now they looked like little old men with their backs hunched. They couldn't be blamed. Every step they took required all their strength. The drain on their bodies was just too great, and they couldn't stop to rest or sleep. It was already because of their extraordinary physiques that they could last this long. If it were an ordinary epic expert, they probably wouldn't have been able to last this long even if they didn't die of exhaustion on the immortal-seeking path. Looking up, there was still no end to the mountain and stone steps. Looking down, there were clouds lingering, and they couldn't see anything. In this godforsaken place where they couldn't see the sky or the ground, the reason why they knew that they were halfway up the mountain was because of the huge rock beside them that had the words "Half Cliff" engraved on it. After Half Cliff, there's still half the way up, but it's more difficult than the road ahead. Can you still hold on? If you can't, you can rest on Half Cliff's platform for a day before turning around and descending the mountain. That way, you won't be affected by the immortal-seeking mountain's taboos. However, once you reach Half Cliff's platform, you can't continue climbing, Jiang Yan said. Since we're already here, we have to go up and take a look. We can't give up halfway. I can still persevere. Let's continue, Zhou said. After Half Cliff, continue walking forward and you will see something. When the time comes, no matter what you see, don't speak or make a sound. Just keep your mouth shut and walk forward. Otherwise, something bad will happen, Jiang Yan added. Don't speak. I'll remember that. Zhou nodded slightly, but he was somewhat puzzled. The taboos on immortal-seeking mountain weren't written anywhere. For Jiang Yan to know these taboos, someone must have tried it before. Otherwise, if it was really as Jiang Yan had said, death by taking a step back, Zhou didn't believe that Jiang Yan hadn't taken a step back without knowing. However, since Jiang Yan didn't say anything, Zhou didn't ask. He continued walking behind Jiang Yan. The stone steps at the foot of the mountain were very narrow, but after passing Half Cliff, the stone steps became much wider. It was more than enough for 2 or 3 people to walk side by side. But now, the two of them couldn't speak. If they walked side by side, it would be even worse if they accidentally said something. So, the two of them walked one after the other. Neither of them said a word, as if they were two mutes. Zhou felt his legs tremble with every step he took. No matter how powerful a primordial energy art or primordial energy skill was, it was useless in this godforsaken place. using external forces to strengthen his physique, and strength would also raise the strange power. It would still push his body to its limit. As he walked, Zhou Wen's gaze inadvertently swept across the stone steps in front of him. His pupils constricted as he nearly shouted. If Jiang Yan hadn't warned him in advance, he definitely would have cried out. This was because there was a corpse lying on the stone path above, and the corpse's clothes and appearance were identical to Zhou Wen's. Zhou Wen was puzzled, but he couldn't say a word. All he could do was continue walking forward. As he walked, he sized up the corpse by the side of the road. No matter how he looked at it, it was identical to him. However, the corpse that had collapsed on the stone steps was no longer breathing. It must be the same as before. It's still an illusion. Zhou Wen stopped looking at the corpse and continued walking. After tiring himself to death, he walked for a while and made a turn around a ridge. Then, he saw another corpse on the stone steps in front of him. This time, he could see it even more clearly. It was a corpse that looked like Zhou Wen. What Zhou Wen couldn't stand was that the corpse that looked like him wasn't covered by any clothes. Its limbs were wide open, and it was nailed to the mountain wall by nails. It looked like it had died an extremely tragic death. Everything is an illusion. Everything is nothingness. I'll bear with it. Zhou Wen secretly calmed himself down. Although he knew that it was only an illusion, it was still infuriating. The key point was that the person resembled him too much. Even the marks and scars on his body were identical. As he walked up, Zhou Wen saw all sorts of ways of dying. Some were hung to death, while others were cleaved into two by a knife. All sorts of deaths were extremely tragic. However, he didn't feel much about such things after seeing so many of them. Along the way, he had seen at least hundreds and thousands of ways of dying. He was already used to it. After walking for another 7 or 8 days, when the sun rose again, the two of them finally saw the top of the mountain. There were no buildings there, only a crooked tree of an unknown species growing at the top of the mountain. Its branches extended all the way to the edge of the cliff. On one of the main branches of the crooked tree hung a huge green cocoon. On careful look, the cocoon didn't touch the branch but was floating there. Under the crooked tree beside it lay a white beast. It was snow-white in color and had 2 horns on its head. There was a vertical eye on its forehead, but the vertical eye was closed. It was likely the Bai Zhe that Jiang Yan had guessed. Zhou Wen and Jiang Yan walked to the top of the mountain. Bai Zhe had definitely discovered them, but it ignored them completely. It continued lying there resting, not caring about them at all. It didn't even look at them. Zhou Wen had heard from Jiang Yan that the white beast wouldn't take the initiative to attack them. This was also one of the main reasons why he determined that the white beast was Bai Zhe. Bai Zhe was an auspicious and kind auspicious beast. It was well versed in astronomy, geography, the past, and the future. It could speak and distinguish between ghosts and God. Legend had it that it had once been entrusted by the Yellow Emperor to draw pictures of tens of thousands of ghosts and gods, allowing humans to distinguish ghosts and gods and avoid calamity. It was one of the ancient divine beasts that exorcised evil. Did you see those strange corpses previously? Jiang Yan asked Zhou Wen. I saw them. All the corpses looked the same as me, Zhou Wen answered. How many were there in total? Jiang Yan asked again. I don't remember. There were so many that I didn't count carefully. There should be more than 1,000. Zhou Wen paused and asked Jiang Yan, why are you asking this? Aren't those illusions? Jiang Yan looked at Zhou Wen with a strange smile. More than 1,000? You sure are impressive. What do you mean? Zhou Wen didn't understand what Jiang Yan meant. Jiang Yan said with a smile, legend has it that it's the path from mortality to immortality. It's also the process of shedding mortality. Every corpse illusion you see is a sin you have committed. Only by removing the sins you have committed can you not be erased by the heavenly tribulation when you become an immortal. You saw more than 1,000 corpses, which means that you have committed more than 1,000 capital crimes. Chapter 583. It's just a legend. It can't be accurate. I think anyone would see so many corpses, right? Zhou naturally didn't believe this. If it was really the process of shedding mortality, he had already walked up, but he hadn't become an immortal. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I know a few people who have walked the immortal-seeking road. One of them only saw 3 corpses, and the most were more than 100 corpses, Jiang Yan said. Then how many corpses did you see? Zhou asked Jiang Yan. Jiang Yan looked at the path he had come from and said indifferently, I don't know. I didn't count. The mountain wall on the way here is filled with corpses like a mountain of corpses. There are only corpses, not mountains. That's even more impossible. How many people can students like us kill? How can there be so many sins? Zhou looked at Jiang Yan. He actually didn't believe that Jiang Yan could see so many corpses. Follow the plan. Jiang Yan didn't say anything else as he walked towards the crooked tree at the top of the mountain. As Jiang Yan walked, he summoned 2 companion beasts. One was a black python with a body as thick as a bowl. It was more than 10 meters long, and its body was as black as ink. Strangely, the python didn't have eyes. It only kept flicking its tongue. The other companion beast was also black, but it was dressed like a warrior in black armor. It also wore a black mask and had 2 sabers on its back. They were also black scabbards and black handles. It was likely the Darkness Domain Heavenly King. Zhou didn't dare be negligent as he summoned 6-winged and the Golden Battle God Halberd. Torch Dragon appeared in the form of an eye mirror. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Zhou didn't plan on using Bright Torch Vision World. Firstly, Bai Zai's reputation was too terrifying. Zhou wasn't sure if Bright Torch Vision World was effective against it. If it didn't have any effect and ended up angering it, he would be the one to suffer. Furthermore, Bai Zai wouldn't take the initiative to attack. Previously, when Jiang Yan approached the Crooked Tree's range, it only said, "Scram," and made Jiang Yan scram down the mountain. It didn't kill him. Only then did Bai Zai look up at him. This glance made Zhou heart skip a beat. It didn't look at 6-winged or the Golden Battle God Halberd. Instead, it looked at Zhou's eyes. Don't tell me it has already discovered Torch Dragon? Zhou was secretly alarmed. Seeing that Zhou was ready, Jiang Yan immediately ordered the Soundless Snake and the Darkness Domain Heavenly King to use their powers. The Soundless Snake opened its mouth. There were no poisonous fangs inside, but visible ripples could be seen spreading out from the mountaintop. Almost at the same time, the Dark Domain Heavenly King unsheathed the 2 sabers on his back. The 2 sabers clashed, and a black light, like a black hole, swallowed the entire mountaintop in an instant. Zhou immediately felt his vision turn pitch black. Even with the augmentation of the 8 perfections wisdom and the Hell King life soul, his vision remained pitch black. He couldn't see or hear anything. Unfortunately, Truth Listener is still evolving. I wonder if Truth Listener's ability can break through the Soundless Snake's soundless barrier? As Zhou thought to himself, he suddenly felt his vision light up again. His eyes could see light, and his ears could hear sound. However, as far as the eye could see, the entire mountaintop was shrouded in darkness. Moreover, there were sound waves that spread out like ripples on water. Let's begin. Use your companion beast to attract Bai Zai's attention. Don't really fight it. All you need to do is attract its attention. It's best if it can't see or hear anything, Jiang Yan said as he snuck towards the crooked tree. Zhou ordered 6-winged and the Golden Battle God Halberd to surround Bai Zai from the left and right. At the same time, he made some noise to attract its attention. Bai Zai was still lying on the boulder under the tree, motionless. 6-winged and the Golden Battle God Halberd stood on the left and right. One of them stomped on the ground, leaving huge footprints on the mountain rock. As for the Golden Battle God Halberd, it streaked across the ground, leaving a deep mark. Sparks splattered where the tip of the halberd came into contact with the mountain rock. However, due to the soundless barrier, Their actions didn't emit any sound. Only Zhou Wen and Jiang Yan, who had been specially taken care of by the soundless snake, could hear anything. Bai Zhe still didn't react as it continued lying there, but Zhou Wen and Jiang Yan felt that something was amiss. If Bai Zhe really couldn't see or hear anything, it shouldn't be so calm, right? Indeed, when Six-Winged and the Golden Battle God Halberd approached the crooked tree, Bai Zhe suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a word. Freeze! Then, he saw Six-Winged and the Golden Battle God Halberd seemed to freeze. It was as though someone had pressed the pause button while watching a movie. As for the soundless snake's soundless barrier, it was instantly torn apart by a force and shattered. As though it had suffered a heavy blow, the soundless snake collapsed to the ground. Zhou Wen's face darkened. The soundless barrier was useless at all. It was directly destroyed by Bai Zhe. What was even more depressing was that Six-Winged and the Golden Battle God Halberd were frozen there. No matter how Zhou Wen ordered them, they remained motionless. Six-Winged's eyes could still move, and its expression remained ferocious with its mouth agape, but its body couldn't move. The golden divine light at the tip of the Golden Battle God Halberd kept flickering, but the halberd couldn't move either. To make matters worse, Zhou Wen and Jiang Yan were also frozen there. The Black Domain Heavenly King couldn't move at all. Although his Black Domain was still effective, what use was the Black Domain if no one could move it? Sorry, I underestimated Bai Zhe's strength. I originally thought that the soundless barrier would be able to last a while, but I never expected it to be destroyed in the blink of an eye, Jiang Yan said. Zhou Wen gave it a try. Although he couldn't move his body, he had no problem speaking. We should have thought of this long ago. A famous divine beast like Bai Zhe isn't that easily restrained. Don't worry. I still have a second plan, Jiang Yan said. What's your second plan? Why didn't you tell me in advance? Zhou Wen hurriedly asked when he heard that there was still a chance. There's no need to prepare the second plan. We just need to take action. If I told you in advance, I'm afraid you wouldn't agree to this plan, Jiang Yan said with a strange expression. We can't even move now. How can we take action? Zhou Wen said. We can still move if we think of a way. I just don't know if my second plan will work, Jiang Yan said. What's your second plan? Zhou Wen asked. I've studied many myths and legends and finally came to a conclusion. Bai Zhe might have mysophobia. Jiang Yan's expression turned odd. Mysophobia? So what? Zhou Wen was momentarily taken aback, unable to guess what Jiang Yan was up to. Chapter 584. Typically, people with mysophobia wouldn't be willing to touch dirty things, Jiang Yan said. Zhou Wen was enlightened. You mean to say that we have to dirty our bodies? Then, Bai Zhe won't be willing to touch us. Why didn't you say so earlier? It's not like it's difficult. I can make preparations in advance, and get some pot ashes or something when I come. That's not the case. No matter how dirty we are, it makes no difference to Bai Zhe. This is because it doesn't need to touch us at all. All it needs to do is say a word to finish us off. If we are too dirty, it might even incur its annoyance. It might only chase us down, but seeing how dirty we are, it might throw us off the cliff and kill us, Jiang Yan said with a shake of his head. Then what do you mean? Zhou Wen really couldn't figure out what Jiang Yan meant. I mean, perhaps we can have some way to make Bai Zhe unwilling to even look at us or even say a word to us, Jiang Yan said. How is that possible? No matter how dirty we are, it's impossible to make it unwilling to look at us, right? Even if it doesn't want to look at us and closes its eyes, it only needs to say a word to make us scram down the mountain. No matter how Zhou Wen thought about it, it was impossible. Of course it's possible. As long as you do as I say, you can definitely do it, Jiang Yan said confidently. How do I do it? Zhou Wen asked doubtfully. You'll know when you see this. A purple light flickered between Jiang Yan's eyebrows. His body, which was originally immobile like Zhou Wen's, actually moved. Then, he threw a book in front of Zhou Wen. This only took an instant. After doing all of this, the purple light between Jiang Yan's eyebrows vanished, and his body returned to its frozen state. Take a good look at the contents of that comic book and you will know what to do, Jiang Yan said. Bai Zhe clearly had absolute confidence in itself. Although it had heard Zhou Wen and Jiang Yan's conversation and could understand what they were saying, it didn't mind at all. It looked at them disdainfully as though they were two idiots. From its point of view, no matter what Zhou Wen and Jiang Yan did, it only needed to say a word to finish off these two idiots. Zhou Wen couldn't move his body, but thankfully, he could still move his mouth. He blew at the comic book on the ground and used the airflow to affect the pages of the comic book. This was an episode of a comic book. There was no beginning or end. Zhou Wen didn't understand what it meant at first, but after reading it for a while, his expression gradually turned odd. The content of the comic book looked very normal. There didn't seem to be anything special. However, it didn't seem to be. Bai Zhe lay there and secretly opened one of its eyes to take a peek. Seeing that there was nothing wrong with the drawing, it closed its eyes and continued to rest leisurely. Are you sure this will work? Zhou Wen asked Jiang Yan with a strange expression after reading it. Jiang Yan said with certainty, definitely. Will Bai Zhe kill us if we do this? Zhou Wen asked again. Bai Yan said. When that 2 to Bai. Zhang Yan 2 to 1. Wait, what do you mean by I've tainted its place? Shouldn't it be us? Zhou Wen felt that something was amiss. Wen, only you can complete this matter. I can't, Jiang Yan said sincerely. We're all men. Why can't I do it? Zhou Wen immediately retorted. He didn't believe Jiang Yan's nonsense. Actually, I'm also a germaphobe. It's no better than Bai Zhe's. That's why I need your help. Otherwise, I could have done it myself. I wouldn't have brought you here. Jiang Yan continued sincerely, it's precisely because I'm also a germaphobe that I know this method will definitely succeed. Like hell I believe you. If you want to do it, we'll do it together. If you want me to do it myself, there's no way, Zhou Wen said through gritted teeth. Sorry, Wen. I'll make it up to you in the future. As Jiang Yan spoke, the purple dot of light between his eyebrows lit up again, allowing him to temporarily escape Bai Zhe's immobilizing power. In the next second, Jiang Yan flicked his hand and produced a piece of paper that landed right on top of Zhou Wen's head. After doing all of this, the purple light between Jiang Yan's eyebrows dimmed again as he was immobilized once again. What are you doing? What's that on my head? Zhou Wen looked up from the corner of his eyes, but he couldn't see anything above his head. This is an epic companion beast. Its name is Zenith Paper Figurine. As long as it lands on your head, it can control your body. Then, your body will do whatever it does. Don't worry. The Zenith Paper Figurine's control of your body is similar to that of a marionette. Your body is still immobilized, but it doesn't affect your actions. As Jiang Yan explained, the Zenith Paper Figurine had already stood up. It was a paper figurine cut out of yellow paper. It didn't have a nose or eyes. It was just a human-shaped paper cutout. However, when it stood above Zhou Wen's head, Zhou Wen's originally immobile body actually moved like a puppet. However, it looked extremely stiff. Don't worry. I've already gotten someone to teach it all the actions. It will do it in one go at the fastest speed possible. Remember to say your lines. Jiang Yan closed his eyes. He didn't even want to look, nor did he want to imagine the scene. No. No. Zhou Wen widened his eyes as he looked down. He watched helplessly as one of his hands uncontrollably tugged at his belt like a bolt of lightning. Wen, I've wronged you. I'll make it up to you in the future. Jiang Yan closed his eyes with a guilty expression. However, Jiang Yan's expression suddenly changed. He opened his eyes and glanced sideways, but he didn't see Zhou Wen. The purple light between Jiang Yan's eyebrows immediately erupted again, but unfortunately, it was too late. Zhou Wen appeared behind him with a devilish smile. He grabbed the zenith paper figurine with one hand and kept struggling in his hand, but it couldn't escape his grasp. As for Zhou Wen's other hand, he had already grabbed Jiang Yan's pants and pulled them down. Then, he kicked Jiang Yan's buttock. Jiang Yan's pupils constricted as he rolled towards Bai Zhe with a look of despair. Haha, brother Bai Zhe, take a closer look at the places that guy has rolled past. Those places have been contaminated by his filthy germs. When the wind blows, the filthy germs will constantly spread. Soon, the entire mountaintop will be covered in filthy germs. You must not let him roll down the mountain. Wherever he rolls past will be contaminated by the filthy germs. Zhou Wen was speaking smugly when he suddenly saw a purple whip wrap around his leg without him realizing it. Jiang Yan, who was rolling towards Bai Zhe, gritted his teeth and pulled. Zhou Wen's pants tore as his body fell to the ground and rolled towards Bai Zhe. Chapter 585. What were people with severe mysophobia most afraid of? Of course, it was not the dirty things that could be seen. The dirty things that could be seen could be removed. For patients with severe mysophobia, as long as it could be removed, it was not a problem. They could spend a lot of time to remove the dirty things. What they really couldn't tolerate was the psychological cues. It was just like when a patient with mysophobia went to wash his hands after urinating and used his hand to turn on the faucet. He would feel that the faucet was tainted with egg-shaped bacteria. After washing his hands would be clean, but when he turned off the faucet, he would be tainted with the egg-shaped bacteria on the faucet. This would repeat over and over again, making it impossible for him to be completely clean. Unless it was a faucet that automatically sensed water, a person with severe mysophobia would struggle in front of the sink for a long time. Now, 2 dirty egg-shaped bacteria sources were rapidly rolling on the mountaintop. Many places they rolled past were tainted with the dirty egg-shaped bacteria. If Bai Zhe said the word, scram, now, the 2 huge sources of infection would roll all the way down the mountain, infecting the entire mountain. If Zhou Wen hadn't said anything, Bai Zhe might not have thought of that much. However, after Zhou Wen's words, Bai Zhe felt that it wasn't appropriate to deal with these 2 dirty fellows. It wanted to freeze the 2 of them, but for some reason, the fix formula was useless against them. Kill them? Bai Zhe felt that it would contaminate the entire mountaintop. Furthermore, it wasn't a creature that would easily kill. Now, Bai Zhe didn't even want to look at the 2 dirty sources of infection. It was as if it would be infected by the dirty egg-shaped bacteria as long as it looked at them. Retreat. Slowly retreat. An existence as powerful as Bai Zhe was actually retreating. I'm about to succeed. Zhou Wen was delighted when he saw that he and Jiang Yan were about to roll to the side of the crooked tree. Although this move was a little despicable and shameless, it was fine as long as it could achieve its goal. There was no one else here, so there was no need to worry if they couldn't see their sorry state. The only hateful thing was that Jiang Yan could clearly use this method himself, but he had dragged him over. It took a long time to describe, but in fact, from the moment Zhou Wen kicked Jiang Yan out to the moment the 2 of them slammed into the crooked tree, it only took an instant. The frightened Bai Zhe didn't react in such a short period of time. It had already retreated to the top of the mountain with a look of horror and disgust, as though the entire mountaintop had been contaminated by them. When he slammed into the tree, Zhou Wen had already summoned the jade crystal spirit armor and put it on. At the same time, he shouted at Jiang Yan, "Senior brother Jiang, don't wear any clothes. Otherwise, Bai Zhe will definitely charge back when he sees you wearing clothes. You won't have the chance to contract a guardian. Don't fail at the last moment." Jiang Yan obviously wasn't willing to listen to him. He was even faster than Zhou Wen. He had already summoned his armor and put it on. His first reaction wasn't to pounce at the azure silk cocoon, but to slap away the dirt on his body. This fellow really has severe mysophobia. When Zhou Wen saw Jiang Yan's actions, he immediately rushed over and kicked him away, sending him flying towards the azure silk cocoon. "Senior brother, I'll lend you a leg," Zhou shouted at Jiang Yan, who had flown out. Jiang Yan slammed into the azure silk cocoon like a cannonball. He resisted the extreme discomfort in his heart and the urge to clean his body. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat a mouthful of blood onto the cocoon. Zhou watched as Jiang Yan's blood slowly seeped into the azure silk cocoon. This was the first time he had seen someone contract a guardian. He didn't know if Jiang Yan's method would succeed. Bai Zhe stood above the sea of clouds and saw that Jiang Yan's blood had already fused into the azure silk cocoon. The expression on his face was abnormally complicated. He didn't move as he stood above the sea of clouds and looked at the azure silk cocoon. The azure silk cocoon absorbed Jiang Yan's blood. It wasn't much blood, but it quickly dyed the huge azure silk cocoon red. As the azure silk cocoon was completely dyed red, cracks began to appear on it. Fragments formed from coiled cocoon threads fell from it. From the spot where it fell, a cyan light seeped out. It looked extremely pure. As the azure silk cocoon constantly shattered, Zhou saw a curled-up body through the cracks. However, it was different from what Zhou had imagined. It was a cyan-clothed fairy with fluttering clothes. She didn't have any characteristics of Bai Zhe. Zhou originally imagined that the creatures inside the cocoon were typically related to the dimensional creatures that protected him. For example, the one in Ant City had some characteristics of the ant race. There was also John's six-winged seraphim. According to him, the mythical creature guarding the cathedral was an angel. However, he had used a trick to bypass the angel and form a contract with the six-winged seraphim. He hadn't really fought the angel. In that situation, John hadn't truly obtained the six-winged seraphim's recognition. Now, Jiang Yan had also used a trick. Zhou was worried that he wouldn't be able to obtain the guardian's true recognition. It would be terrifying if he had to pay a price to contract it. Don't tell me this guardian is also from the eunuch society? An indescribable scene flashed through Zhou mind as he looked at Jiang Yan with an odd expression. Just as Zhou was pondering over it, the azure silk cocoon had completely shattered. Azure vines appeared out of thin air and danced around the cyan fairy inside. When the azure vines transformed into beams of light that resembled true dragons that rose into the sky, they shattered and fell, turning into petals that filled the sky. The cyan-clothed fairy turned pink amidst the petals. The petals that filled the sky danced with the fairy. The fairy's gaze was calm as she walked in front of Jiang Yan. She extended her hand and said to him, "My name is Fairy Burial. Are you willing to let me be your guardian and fight with you?" "I'm willing," Jiang Yan answered seriously. "As you wish." Fairy Burial's palm pressed on Jiang Yan's forehead. A pink light spread out from the spot where his fingers touched Jiang Yan's forehead. In an instant, Fairy Burial's body transformed into countless petals that surged towards Jiang Yan's body, condensing into a flower armor that completely enveloped Jiang Yan's body. As more and more petals condensed on the armor, the original pink turned red. The red gradually turned dark red before turning purple. When all the petals fused into the flower armor, the armor had already turned dark purple. It looked strange and gorgeous. The flower armor looked extremely gorgeous, as though it was a perfect piece of art. However, for some reason, Zhou seemed to smell the scent of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood in the gorgeous armor. It left him horrified. As the flower armor fused with Jiang Yan's body, his body erupted with unimaginable power. That power no longer belonged to the epic stage. It was shocking to the core. The Dharch is right. The power of a guardian can indeed allow humans to enter the mythical stage. However, the main body of such an advancement is the armor formed by the guardian, not the human himself, Zhou thought. Chapter 586. Sorry, it's done. Jiang Yan, who was wearing the armor of flowers, cupped his fists at Bai Zhe, who was above the clouds. Bai Zai's eyes drooped as though he was thinking about something. Moments later, he glanced at Jiang Yan and Zhou Wen before turning around and disappearing in the blink of an eye. Senior brother, congratulations on obtaining a guardian as you wished. Zhou Wen hurriedly went forward to congratulate him. Do you think I'll forgive you just like that? What you did to me just now is unforgivable. Jiang Yan stared at Zhou Wen as the corners of his mouth gradually curled up. Zhou Wen cursed inwardly as he turned around and ran down the mountain. However, it was already too late. Jiang Yan's fingers streaked across the void, and a flower that resembled a rose appeared between his fingers. The flower was beautiful and crimson like blood. Immortal Burial 6 Rites Sacrifice. With Jiang Yan's voice, the flower flew out from his fingers and instantly vanished. By the time the flower appeared again, it was already stuck in Zhou Wen's hair. It stood upright like a lone flower growing on a grave. Zhou Wen immediately felt his body unable to move like a dead person. Not only could his body not move, but even his heart and breathing had stopped. His body lay straight down. Although his bodily functions had completely stopped, he was still conscious and could sense everything around him. Jiang Yan's fingers moved slightly as the flower in Zhou Wen's hair slanted slightly. Zhou Wen opened his eyes and could move his mouth, but he still couldn't move his body. Senior brother, stop fooling around, Zhou Wen said. How can it be fooling around? I'm thanking you for helping me so much just now, Jiang Yan said through gritted teeth as he kicked Zhou Wen's ass. By the time Zhou Wen returned to school, it had already been half a month since he left. After Jiang Yan obtained a guardian, his strength had indeed become very powerful. This strength was somewhat different from having a companion beast. Companion beasts were ultimately external forces that couldn't really increase their basic stats and bodily functions. However, the armor transformed from a guardian could fuse with the body to a certain extent, allowing the human body to possess the attributes and characteristics of a guardian. This was a basic improvement that allowed one to directly enter the mythical stage. However, this improvement was only limited to fusing with the guardian armor. After the guardian armor separated, Jiang Yan was still at the epic stage. His body didn't advance to the mythical stage. This resulted in Jiang Yan's strength being at the mythical stage only when he wore the guardian armor. However, Jiang Yan was indeed very strong when he wore the guardian armor. A guardian had an essence energy skill, life providence, life soul, and wheel of destiny. Having a guardian was equivalent to having an additional mythical body. When he saw Jiang Yan use all sorts of powerful powers, he realized that they were much stronger than when Hardadef used the six-winged seraphim. It was unknown if Fairy Burial was stronger than the six-winged seraphim, or if Jiang Yan was stronger than Hardadef, or a combination of both. This tempted Zhou Wen, but he quickly rejected this thought. If he wasn't at his wits' end, he wasn't willing to take the path of contracting a guardian. Even if there was really no other way, he could still try spirit casting. However, spirit casting seemed to be more difficult and dangerous than contracting a guardian. From what Zhou Wen knew, there were only two paths for humans to advance to the mythical stage. He had never heard of anyone advancing to the mythical stage purely with a human body. I should raise my life soul to a perfect body first. Perhaps there will be a solution when the time comes. Unless it's absolutely necessary, it's best not to take those two paths. This trip to Immortal Seeking Mountain gave Zhou Wen some ideas. Using the mysterious taboo power in the dimensional zone to temper his zero taboo life soul was definitely feasible. However, since he didn't find the tiny palm symbol on Immortal Seeking Mountain, it was impossible for Zhou Wen to head there himself. Therefore, he planned on heading to Small Buddha Temple to give it a try. After entering the game, he switched to the zero taboo life soul. Without using blood meditation, the blood-colored avatar ascended the stone steps of Small Buddha Temple. As expected, zero taboo lit up. However, it wasn't as terrifying as the other places. It was still within an acceptable range. As small Buddha temple's taboo power corroded it, zero taboo became brighter and brighter as though it was about to burn. This level of taboo power was still within the range of his life soul's tolerance. Zero taboo was like steel that had been tempered in a furnace. Although the burning would shrink the crystal, it would also become purer. It's indeed useful. Zhouwen was overjoyed. Zero taboo could be said to be an excellent life preservation ability. In the future, when he headed to the various mysterious dimensional zones, he would definitely encounter many unimaginable taboo powers. When the time came, he would have to rely on zero taboo to preserve his life. If zero taboo could be raised to a perfect body, it would undoubtedly be extremely useful to Zhouwen. However, Zhouwen felt that it was too slow to raise zero taboo like this. Furthermore, if he stayed in-game in Small Buddha Temple, he wouldn't be able to grind. Therefore, Zhouwen decided to head to Small Buddha Temple in reality to train his zero taboo life soul. At the same time, he could use his phone to grind. This was a win-win situation. Just as Zhouwen was about to pack his things and head to Small Buddha Temple, he heard the doorbell ring. When he opened the door, he saw Wang Lu with the chick and antelope. When Zhouwen wasn't around, the two of them would run to Wang Lu's place by themselves. Zhouwen couldn't be bothered to pick them up. "I'll return little Feifei and little antelope to you. You have to take good care of them in the future. Don't leave them in the dorm," Wang Lu said to Zhouwen. "Got it," Zhouwen answered. Wang Lu bit her lip and said, "I'm leaving. Where are you going?" Zhouwen was slightly taken aback before he reacted and said, "Didn't your uncle already agree to let you stay on campus to study? Did he go back on his word?" Wang Lu shook her head and said, "It's not that. I'm about to advance to the epic stage, so I have to return." "What does advancing to the epic stage have to do with returning?" Zhouwen was somewhat puzzled. "The primordial energy art I cultivate is different from others. Every advancement will result in a regression. After I advance to the epic stage, I will fall back to the mortal stage in a very short period of time. Only by cultivating to the epic stage again can I stabilize it. During this period, my body is very prone to injuries, so Father wants me to return home to advance to the epic stage," Wang Lu said. "I see. Then you really should return." Zhouwen felt that it was too troublesome for Wang Lu to cultivate this primordial energy art. However, such a troublesome primordial energy art was likely extraordinary in strength. As though understanding that Wang Lu was leaving, the antelope walked to Wang Lu's side. The chick also flew onto Wang Lu's shoulder as though it was reluctant to part with her. Wang Lu hugged the chick and stroked the antelope's head. She said with a smile, "If you can't bear to part with me, come home with me. After all, your master doesn't care about you. I wonder how much suffering you will suffer if you follow him." Chapter 587. Wang Lu had only asked jokingly. Even if the chick and antelope really left with her, she couldn't take Zhouwen's pets away. Having raised the chick and antelope for so long, how could she not know that these two-dimensional creatures had extraordinary origins? However, just as Wang Lu asked that question, the chick, who was originally very affectionate with her, flapped its wings and flew back to Zhouwen. It turned its face to the side as though it didn't know her. Although the antelope wasn't that heartless, it had no intention of leaving with her. It slowly walked back to Zhouwen's side. How infuriating! What kind of person keeps what kind of pet? They're all heartless cheats. All they know is to scam for food and drink. Wang Lu angrily pointed at the chick and said, "I usually dote on you the most. I give you all the delicious food. You little cheat." Zhouwen was somewhat surprised. The antelope could be said to have other motives for following him, but the chick was so determined. Zhouwen never expected it to be so determined. This fellow was usually extremely close to Wang Lu and despised Zhouwen. He never expected it to stand on Zhouwen's side at such a critical moment. "When are you leaving?" Zhouwen asked Wang Lu. Someone will pick me up tonight, Wang Lu said. I'll inform my classmates to send you off, Zhou said. There's no need. I don't like parting scenes. Wang Lu shook her head slightly before looking at Zhou and saying, You still owe me many meals. I've written it all down in my notebook. How are you going to return it to me? Can I give you a discount? Zhou asked. Of course not. Wang Lu glared at him. Then how do you want me to return it? Zhou said as he spread out his hands. Anyway, just remember this debt. Wang Lu put away her notebook and turned to walk out of Four Seasons Garden. After taking a few steps, she stopped and said to Zhou with her back facing him, If you can't stay in the Yin family any longer, remember to look for me in the capital. You can work at my place while paying your debt. With that said, Wang Lu left Four Seasons Garden along the small path. Zhou watched Wang Lu leave and felt somewhat at a loss. He originally imagined that his 4 years in university would be relatively peaceful, but seeing people he was familiar with leave one by one, fate was unpredictable. I hope we'll have the chance to meet again. Zhou really wasn't sure if he could see Wang Lu again. Once the dimensional zones lost their effect, the roads between the major cities would definitely be cut off. It probably wouldn't be easy to go from Luoyang to the capital. At the end of the day, without strength, he probably wouldn't be able to do anything in the future. He might not even have a chance of survival. Therefore, Zhou only wanted to quickly raise his strength. He didn't want to become an existence like Wang Mingyuan, nor did he want to contract a guardian. He wanted to give it a try and see if he could walk a path that belonged to him. Must humans not advance to the mythical stage with their bodies? Zhou didn't believe that this was a conclusion. Since humans could advance to the legendary and epic stages, why couldn't they advance to the mythical stage? He walked all the way to Small Buddha Temple. This was a forbidden zone that forbade outsiders from approaching. However, Zhou had the Pass of Tranquility, so he was naturally exempt. According to what Zhou knew, Small Buddha Temple still had 2 mythical companion eggs. However, no one could take them away because no one had mastered the small perfection of wisdom. And Tianzhua had set this place as a forbidden zone and forbade outsiders from approaching because he didn't want enemy factions to master the small perfection of wisdom and obtain benefits from it. Zhou walked up the stone steps in front of Small Buddha Temple as the Zero Taboo Life soul lit up. Zhou walked all the way to Small Buddha Temple. He originally planned on finding a place to sit down and game, but just as he entered Small Buddha Temple, he saw a person standing in the yard. Although he could only see the back of the tall figure, Zhou still recognized her. Why isn't Jing here? Zhou looked at the back and frowned slightly. And Jing was standing in front of the Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra's stone monument, reading the sutras on it. When she sensed someone approaching, she turned her head and saw Zhou. She also frowned slightly. Ever since Jing had the frost aura in her body melted away by Zhou, her latent illness hadn't relapsed. Her cultivation level had also improved by leaps and bounds. In terms of talent, as siblings, Jing's talent wasn't inferior to Tianzhua's. However, her congenital illness made her progress in cultivating the sun strafe art slow. Otherwise, her achievements would have been far greater. Now that her latent illness didn't relapse, Jing began seeking a breakthrough to the epic stage. The sun strafe art was a primordial energy art that focused on combat. To figure out its profundity and condense a life soul, one had to constantly challenge and break through. This challenge wasn't only about physical cultivation, but also mental and willpower. She had been in Small Buddha Temple for many days to look at the Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra stone monument. It wasn't to cultivate the Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, but to use the effects the Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra had on her body and mind to train herself. This training method was very dangerous. If she didn't control it well, it might cause irreparable damage to her body and mind. However, Jing was confident that she could control herself. Upon seeing Zhou, and Jing felt mixed emotions. She was originally angry that her qualification had been taken away by Zhou. She had always believed that Zhou was far inferior to her, and she even felt that Ouyang was biased. That was why she had sought trouble with Zhou. Instead of saying that she was targeting Zhou, it was better to say that she was unhappy with Ouyang. However, what happened later exceeded Jing's expectations. Zhou repeated achievements left her in a different light. In just a short year, he had advanced from the mortal stage to the epic stage, surpassing her in terms of level. He had even accidentally removed her ailment. Although Jing didn't pay much attention to the Sunset Army, she was still a member of the family. She would more or less hear about Zhou, making her involuntarily pay attention to him in secret. However, many of the rumors regarding Zhou left Jing in disbelief. She couldn't believe that Zhou had done such shocking things. She felt as though she was being left behind by Zhou. If it were anyone else, they might feel remorseful and blame everything on the qualification that should have belonged to her, but it had been taken away by Zhou. However, Jing was clearly not such a person. Therefore, she would only work harder to make herself stronger. Even if she didn't have the qualification, she would still be better than Zhou. Zhou and Jing had nothing to say. Since Jing was here, he walked into the temple hall. This time, no one disturbed the other. As Zhou already had Truth Listener, he didn't trigger the three-faced Buddha's power when he entered the temple hall again. After finding a spot in the temple hall to sit down, Zhou took out his phone to game. Although he could get the blood-colored avatar to come to small Buddha temple to double the cultivation effects, Zhou didn't think it was necessary. He still had to grind dungeons and rare dimensional creatures every day. Sogu. Chapter 588. Zhou was gaming in the temple hall, so he didn't pay much attention to the silence outside. However, Jing couldn't ignore Zhou. Although Zhou was in the temple hall and Jing couldn't see him, she had a nagging feeling that there was a gaze watching her from inside the temple hall. "I won't be inferior to you." Jing forced herself to focus and continued reading the Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Perhaps it was because of the catfish effect. Ever since Zhou came, Jing felt that she could persevere better and improve faster. In the past, Jing would feel that her body and mind had reached their limits after reading the Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra for an hour. However, for some reason, perhaps because she felt that Zhou was watching her from inside, Jing lasted for an hour and a half this time, feeling that she hadn't reached her limit. Zhou had no idea that he had such a use. He leaned against a pillar in the temple hall and gamed. The blood-colored avatar entered Deer Terrace Pavilion again. The fake immortals on the first two levels had been eliminated. Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar to ascend to the third highest level. Could the Dharch be on the third level? If she's really here, I can find her weakness in-game. Once I defeat her, I can teach her a lesson in real life. Zhou was somewhat excited. After getting the blood-colored avatar to ascend to the third level, he quickly sized up the situation inside. Similar to the second level, there was only one-dimensional creature on the third level. It was a cold, white-robed female immortal sitting on a throne. Could she be the Dharch? Zhou guessed inwardly, but he didn't stay in a daze. He ordered Torch Dragon to use the bright torch vision world and look at the white-robed female immortal. Zhou also stared at the white-robed female immortal. With a wave of her hand, a white jade pipa appeared in her arms. She waved her fingers on the strings and immediately produced a terrifying sound wave. Thankfully, Zhou was prepared and had used the demon dragon true body. However, he was still sent flying by the sound wave, vomiting blood as he slammed into a stone pillar in the hall. However, almost at the same time, the white-robed female immortal was sucked into Torch Dragon's bright torch vision world. A notification of killing the Jade Pipa spirit appeared on the phone screen. So it's Jade Pipa spirit, not that demon concubine. Zhouwen was somewhat disappointed. Of the legendary 3 demons of Xianyuan, 9-headed pheasant spirit, jade pipa spirit, and 9-tailed fox, Zhouwen had already seen the first 2, but there was no sign of the 9-tailed fox. Although a 9-tailed fox phantom would appear when flying towards Deer Terrace Pavilion from the sky, it was only a phantom and not the true body. The bright torch vision world could only reflect the true body, so it was useless against phantoms. He controlled the blood-colored avatar to search the 3rd level. Logically speaking, Deer Terrace Pavilion shouldn't be that simple. Furthermore, he was certain that the Jade Loot spirit wasn't the Dharch. However, Zhouwen searched the 3rd floor of the ancient building several times, but he didn't find anything. There wasn't even a dimensional crystal, much less any treasures. From the looks of it, the true secrets of Deer Terrace Pavilion are below, but where is the entrance? There's no such gap in the game. How do we get in? Zhouwen had attempted to use Torch Dragon to attack Deer Terrace Pavilion, but it seemed to be protected by some mysterious force. Even the bright torch vision world was unable to break through it. Zhouwen circled around Deer Terrace Pavilion countless times, but he failed to find the entrance below. Unable to find the entrance, Zhouwen could only temporarily give up on Deer Terrace Pavilion and continue grinding other dungeons. At the same time, he trained the Zero Taboo Life Soul in Small Buddha Temple. For the next few days, Zhouwen spent most of his time in Small Buddha Temple. Every time he came, he could see Enjing reading the Small Perfection of Wisdom Sutra stone monument. One day, Zhouwen was grinding when he suddenly saw a bright light in the yard. The light shone in from the temple hall's door, illuminating the temple hall. Zhouwen frowned slightly as he walked out of the temple hall to take a look. He saw Enjing standing in front of the stone monument, her body emitting wisps of light that condensed into a sun-like shadow. The shadow looked somewhat similar to the ancient sovereign that Zhouwen had condensed. They were both illusory forms of light and they looked like humans. The difference was that the ancient sovereign was a pure humanoid shadow, while Enjing's shadow looked like it was holding a bow of light in its hand. Furthermore, the shadow looked more feminine. It wasn't as muscular as the ancient sovereign and was more slender. The sun strafe art is indeed somewhat similar to the ancient sovereign sutra, but there are also differences. After watching for a while, Zhouwen was about to turn around and return to the temple hall to continue grinding when he was stopped by Enjing. "Zhouwen, it's time to end our matter," Enjing said as she stared at Zhouwen. "Is there anything between us that needs to be settled?" Zhouwen turned around and asked Enjing. Enjing's gaze narrowed slightly. "I once defeated you. Don't you want to win it back?" "I've never treated you as my opponent." Zhouwen shook his head slightly and turned to return to the temple hall. "Stop." Zhouwen's words stirred Enjing's fighting spirit. Her life soul fused with her body, causing her body to emit a sun-like glow. In her hand, a bow condensed from light appeared. Zhouwen's words could be understood as him never treating Enjing as an enemy, but it could also be understood as him never taking Enjing seriously. Enjing clearly believed that Zhouwen had the latter mentality. She pulled open the beam bow in her hand and pointed it at Zhouwen's back before continuing, "Take this arrow of mine and the grudge between us will be written off." Just as Enjing said that, she suddenly felt her vision blur. Zhouwen's body emitted a glow that was even more intense and dazzling than the glow on her body. He was already in front of her, and his sun-like fist was about to strike her face. Enjing gritted her teeth and retreated, raising the bow in her hand to block. Boom! Enjing was sent flying with her bow and arrow by Zhouwen's punch. She streaked across more than 10 meters like a cannonball and slammed into the temple's wall. What? Enjing spat out a mouthful of blood as the glow on her body dimmed and she fell to the ground. "As you wish. Don't bother me in the future." Zhouwen really wasn't in the mood to play childish games with Enjing. After returning to the temple hall, Zhouwen continued grinding while Enjing sat on the ground in a daze, motionless for a long time. She still remembered that she had defeated Zhouwen in one strike back then, but now, she couldn't even withstand a single punch from Zhouwen. After a long while, Anjing wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and stood up. Her eyes gradually turned resolute as she looked in the direction of the temple hall before turning to walk out of small Buddha temple. I have to defeat you. Although her goal was the same as before, Anjing's mentality was completely different from before. Sogu. Chapter 589. Luoyang and Family. Anjing came in front of Tianzhua and said firmly, "Brother, I want to join the military." "Why?" Tianzhua asked Anjing. "I've already advanced to the epic stage. The things I can learn in school are very limited. I need a place that can allow me to improve faster." Anjing hesitated for a moment before saying, "I know this will put you in a difficult position. Mom definitely won't agree, but you will help me, right, brother? Have you really thought it through? The military isn't a school. Although it's also a dimensional zone, those unexplored dimensional zones are hundreds or thousands of times more dangerous than the dimensional zones you have come into contact with in the past." Tianzhua stared at Anjing and asked solemnly. "I've thought it through," Anjing answered seriously. "All right, you're my precious sister after all." Tianzhua stood up and patted Anjing on the head. He said with a smile, "Tell me, where do you want to go?" "Chess Mountain," Anjing answered. Tianzhua's expression changed slightly. "Why choose that place?" "Because it's the most dangerous place," Anjing answered. "Apart from Chess Mountain, any other place will do." Tianzhua firmly rejected Anjing. "Apart from Chess Mountain, I'm not going anywhere else." Anjing looked Tianzhua in the eye without backing down. Tianzhua's gaze finally softened. He could be ruthless to anyone, but he couldn't do anything to Anjing and Ouyanglan. "I can let you go to Chess Mountain, but you have to agree to one condition." Tianzhua paused for a moment before continuing, "I'll get Little Knife to go with you to Chess Mountain. During this period of time in Chess Mountain, she has to be by your side at all times. You can't shake her off." "All right." Anjing knew that this was Tianzhua's greatest concession. If she didn't agree, Tianzhua definitely wouldn't let her go to Chess Mountain. "How long do you plan on going?" Tianzhua asked again. "I'll return after my life soul advances to a perfect body," Anjing said. After Anjing left, Tianzhua called Anxing over and informed him of Anjing's trip to Chess Mountain. Then, he got Anxing to make the arrangement. "Isn't Chess Mountain too dangerous? Although Little Knife is following Missin, no one can guarantee her safety if there's a large-scale breakout at Chess Mountain," Anxing said worriedly. "Don't underestimate this sister of mine. Besides, Chess Mountain shouldn't have any major problems in the short term. Just do as I say." Tianzhua paused for a moment before saying, "Have you found the sources of the companion beasts? All the major factions in the Federation are investigating. We can roughly confirm that most of the companion beasts come from overseas. A small portion of them were secretly nurtured by the local bigwigs," Anxing answered. "Tianzhua Tianji. From the Zhou clan of God, Anshan and Qin Yanglan." "I see." "As I, God, the Zhou Yang, Anjing Zhou Lan, Anshan and of Anshun, of Anshun, and the first spot on the rankings was still firmly occupied by Primordial Sword Immortal. Death of the Underworld was still second. The other top 10 had dropped to a certain extent. And that night, the black cubes all over the world lit up again. As the black cubes had been lighting up too frequently recently, people were numb to it. Only a few people passing by on the street would pay attention to see which companion beasts were on the rankings. It wasn't like in the past, when many people would wake up in the middle of the night to take a look. A peacock appeared on the cube screens all over the world. It was gorgeous and elegant. Soon, this companion beast named Thousand-Eyed Peacock entered the top 20, right in front of the six-winged guardian dragon. It pushed the six-winged guardian dragon back one place. The 100-place ranking was filled. The people who were watching in front of the cube imagined that it would end here. The companion beasts that had been on the rankings in the past were all the same. However, to everyone's surprise, the cube didn't turn black like before. After the ranking disappeared, a new scene appeared on the cube's screen. The scene on the screen rotated as though there were countless stars flowing. As the camera zoomed in, the screen seemed to pass through billions of light-years before gradually turning black. Everyone looked at the cube's screen in puzzlement, unsure what was going on. When the screen lit up again, the scene had already turned into an emerald-green grassland. Colorful flowers dotted it, and all the plants suffused a gentle divine glow as though they were protected by a deity. On the grassland there was a huge tree. The tree was like a divine tree, emitting a divine glow as it bore resplendent fruits. Every fruit was crystalline as though there were billions of stars swirling inside. Through the screen, one could sense the terrifying supreme might emitted by the fruit. As the camera zoomed in, the screen froze under the tree. Sitting there was a handsome man with white hair and a white robe. On the man's head was a pair of crystal-like dragon horns. He sat cross-legged under the tree with his eyes closed. He was like a deity that no one could blaspheme. It was as though looking directly at his face was disrespectful to a deity. So handsome. Who is the man under the tree? Is he human? Or is he a companion beast? Many women's eyes lit up when they saw the man sitting cross-legged under the tree. However, the expressions of those who knew the man changed drastically, especially those from the 6 families. Their expressions were so ugly that they were about to freeze. And Tianzhua stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window on the top floor of Great Xia. His gaze pierced through the night and looked at the cube screen in the distance. And Xing stood beside him and said with a strange expression, "Wang Mingyuan, could it be that these cubes are his handiwork? I'm not sure if it's his handiwork, but from the looks of it, something is really going to happen," and Tianzhua said indifferently as he looked at the screen. The people from the 6 families began to gather in front of the cube, and it was even more so in the bureau. The originally silent night also became restless. Countless people who were sleeping were woken up by the ringing of their cell phones. The constantly lit-up lights illuminated the city's night sky especially bright. Shin Yuqi, Qiao Xiyuan, and company were staring at the screen. Many inspectors were busy with their work. Ever since Wang Mingyuan rushed into the dimension, this was the first time he had really appeared. Although he hadn't even seen Wang Mingyuan, the Bureau had been battling Wang Mingyuan for a long time. Now, many high-level experts in the Federation had secretly entered the dimension after mutating. This was clearly Wang Mingyuan's handiwork. Although the Bureau had been trying its best to prevent this from happening, the results were minimal. People all over the world began to pay attention to the cube's screen again. Although many people didn't know Wang Mingyuan's identity, they could sense that something was amiss. "Do you want to become a god? Then let's fight." Wang Mingyuan sat under the tree with his eyes still closed. His expression was calm and unperturbed. His right hand, which seemed to be glowing with divine radiance, slowly reached out. A fruit fell from the tree and landed in his hand. Sogu. Chapter 590. Wang Mingyuan held the fruit in his right hand and rubbed it with his thumb a few times. Divine light flowed on the fruit wherever his finger passed. In the next second, Wang Mingyuan flipped his palm and the fruit fell onto the grass and rolled to the side. Wang Mingyuan remained unmoved. He continued to sit under the tree with his eyes closed, as if he was meditating. At the place where the fruit had fallen, a green worm crawled over from the grass. It slowly crawled onto the fruit and began to gnaw on it. The worm was very small. It looked no different from a caterpillar. Its movements were also very clumsy. It crawled onto the fruit with great difficulty and nibbled at it bit by bit. The fruit was only the size of a palm, and the worm was even smaller. It was inconspicuous as it crawled on top of the fruit. Soon, the green worm's body swelled up like a balloon as it nibbled on the fruit. When its body became big enough to swallow the fruit, it swallowed it in one gulp. Then, its body swelled up even more crazily. In the blink of an eye, the original caterpillar had turned into a terrifying giant beast. Its body had become dozens of meters long. This transformation didn't stop. The body of the worm that had turned into a giant worm emitted a terrifying divine radiance. The divine radiance was like a burning flame that enveloped the body of the giant worm. It constantly emitted light. When the light reached its peak, it emitted an explosion of light that almost made people unable to open their eyes. When the light gradually subsided, everyone was surprised to find that the giant worm had actually turned into a beautiful butterfly. What was even more surprising was that in the center of the butterfly's wings, there was a body that resembled a human woman. She was wearing cyan glass-like armor and had a pair of antennae on top of her head. Her entire body emitted an unparalleled radiance. It was like a goddess of light with butterfly wings had descended. All the humans were dumbfounded. They watched helplessly as a worm turned into such a terrifying creature. Their gazes as they looked at the fruit on the tree became fiery. Many people were thinking that if such a weak worm could become so terrifyingly powerful after eating the fruit, what would happen if they ate the fruit? The worm that had turned into a butterfly woman stared greedily at the fruit of the tree of God. Her butterfly wings flapped and the circular patterns on the wings started to light up, starting from the outer circle. The closer it was to the center, the brighter it became. When the innermost circular patterns lit up, it was like two suns were embedded on her butterfly wings. Boom! Two terrifying beams of light shot out from the center of the butterfly wings, directly piercing through the void and bombarding the divine tree. The terrifying power made people feel that it could even pierce through mountains, let alone a tree. However, the two terrifying beams of light failed to touch the divine tree. Wang Mingyuan, who was sitting cross-legged under the tree with his eyes closed, remained motionless. His body emitted a mysterious glow that blocked the butterfly girl's two beams of light like a protective barrier. The terrifying beam power couldn't even penetrate the light emitted by Wang Mingyuan's body. The butterfly girl's wings flickered as she gritted her teeth and persisted in shooting the beam, but it was in vain. Wang Mingyuan stretched out a palm, seemingly casually spreading his fingers. The light on the butterfly girl's wings instantly extinguished, and her body involuntarily flew towards Wang Mingyuan. The closer she got to Wang Mingyuan, the smaller her body became. In the blink of an eye, she landed in Wang Mingyuan's palm like an ordinary butterfly. No matter how she flapped her wings and struggled, she couldn't fly out of Wang Mingyuan's palm. A strange glow rose from Wang Mingyuan's palm. The glow was like a stream of light that revolved around the butterfly lady faster and faster. Finally, the butterfly lady's body was completely enveloped by the spinning stream of light. When the stream of light dissipated, Wang Mingyuan's palm was empty. Boom! The image of the cube changed. The images of Wang Mingyuan and the tree of God vanished, turning into the image of the cube itself. The butterfly girl was standing on the cube, and beside her appeared her name, Radiant Butterfly Queen. Perhaps it was because the top 100 rankings already had an owner, but the name of the Radiant Butterfly Queen didn't appear on the rankings. But soon, everyone realized that the name of the Dark Monarch, who was ranked 9th on the rankings, had lit up. Before long, the Dark Monarch's figure appeared on the cube and faced the Radiant Butterfly Queen. When the Radiant Butterfly Queen saw the Dark Monarch, the light on her wings lit up again without any hesitation. Circles of light lit up and finally condensed into a dot in the middle. Two beams of light shot out like lasers. They were so fast that no one had time to dodge. The Dark Monarch was a skeleton wearing black armor. Its body burned with black flames, and the sword that represented darkness tore out of its scabbard. The sky behind it turned dark because of the unsheathing of the dark sword. As the dark sword slashed at the radiant butterfly queen, the darkness devoured the light in front of it. Boom! The two beams blasted into the darkness, and the dark sword collided with the power of light. Amidst the terrifying power of light, the dark monarch let out a miserable scream. His body and the dark sword were rapidly purified by the power of light, and moments later, they completely disappeared. The battle scene disappeared, and the rankings appeared on the cube screens around the world. The Dark Monarch's name, which was previously ranked 9th, vanished. The Radiant Butterfly Queen's name appeared in 9th place where the Dark Monarch had been. The people who were watching the battle were alarmed. Previously, when they saw Wang Mingyuan suppress the Radiant Butterfly Queen with a flip of his hand, they thought that she was nothing much. However, who knew that she would easily defeat the 9th-ranked Dark Monarch? Although they could tell that there was an attribute restraint, this also meant that the Radiant Butterfly Queen had the strength to rank in the top 10. The scene on the cube changed, and Wang Mingyuan appeared on the screen again. He was still sitting cross-legged under the divine tree with his eyes closed. When they saw him again, many people's expressions turned complicated. As for the divine tree and fruit behind him, they became the focus of everyone's attention. It was just a bug. After eating a fruit, it had become a powerful existence like the Radiant Butterfly Queen. And there were still many fruits on the tree. The next fruit on the divine tree ripens in 3 months. When the time comes, the owner of the first place on the companion beast ranking will have the right to pluck the fruit. Wang Mingyuan's voice spread to every corner of the world through the cube, causing many complicated thoughts to surface in the minds of all humans. After this sentence, the screen of the cube dimmed and became pitch black. There was no longer a trace of light. However, people's enthusiasm didn't extinguish because of the screen's closure. In any case, it became even more intense. The media constantly released the videos they had recorded. In the middle of the night, many people were discussing the divine tree and the fruit, as well as who would have the right to pluck the ripe divine fruit in 3 months. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.